Well, hello and welcome everyone, and welcome Dr. Silkman from Foul Play. Many of you in the chat know him already, but I'd like to introduce him to everyone who doesn't. Dr. Silkman from Foul Play, we've been watching you over there with the Stephen Avery case, especially for me. But would you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and why we're so fascinated, and so why I might be so excited, which I am, and they know, to have you here?
Well, well, first of all, thank you very much, Claire. And what a beautiful introduction to your channel.
Oh,
Awesome. We're going to get you over to Foul Play and do a couple of videos for us.
okay.
But in essence, I'm one of the founders of the Foul Play team, and I'm very blessed that I have a whole series of passionate researchers that are part of the Foul Play team. I'm one of the founders,
Mhm.
and we formed Foul Play. Oh, we're approaching almost 4 years now. We've got slightly over 2,000 very passionate subscribers. And essentially, guys, what we do in the Foul Play team, we have put in a lot of time, energy, and effort into looking at the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases. The great thing about the Foul Play team, and also what you do, Claire,
Mhm.
we deep dive into the case. So we like to go to official documents, and we all get together about 2 or 3 times a week, and we do podcasts on many, many, many different topics. And my personal background is in DNA molecular biology, molecular genetics. So I play a little small role
A
in the
small
family.
role? Are you kidding? With evidence, that's like the golden carrot there for me, like
The,
DNA.
the
Yeah.
amazing, the amazing thing, Claire, and as you know, DNA is now playing a very prominent role in
Mhm,
many, many cases,
mhm,
current and also cold cases. And it's great to have the ability to look at those cases, read the documents, and understand what those documents actually mean,
mhm.
and then present them on a podcast, a live podcast. And I really enjoy that. And we've done a lot of that in
It
the
is it's a great service because people don't understand what it actually means when they say, "Well, there was elliptals here or there." Nobody gets that. I don't know if a jury would even get that if you don't have somebody come up and explain. Is that a yes? Is that a no? Is that a
I
positive? Is that
think
a negative? You know?
I think
Um,
that's a big issue, Claire. It really, really is.
Yeah, and for you guys, it's great because you're able to go back on the other evidence. And now with CODIS and everything being re-examined and DNA being saved, I see more and more, and I've been reporting more and more on people that are actually released after 28 years, that it
Correct.
definitely couldn't have been them. 40 years. Like I put out, I kind of get snarky about it because I don't like when the legal system fails that way because I have such respect for it that when it fails big. It feels
Correct.
monumental. And so I just have to take a little snark to make myself feel better. So I call those the what the F legal shows and just put it out like a 5 second thing instead of a big deal. But it's monumental what's happening with DNA and how the actual
It is.
changes are coming forward.
It is.
Could you
Um,
tell us a little bit about how you're feeling like that? The changes that you've seen, let's just say in the 4 years that you started foul play, and what you had
there's
to work with and what it is now.
yeah, there's a huge monumental shift. And basically, when I started my own personal research, when I was doing my PhD, and also when I was a scientist in a molecular biology laboratory, the techniques that we use compared to now, it's day and night. The amazing technology that's available now in crime labs is phenomenal.
Mhm,
If you walk inside these crime labs, you'll see that the majority of the equipment are all state of the art equipment, and a lot of the evidence handling is actually done robotically. The analyst really has almost a
mhm,
minimal role, and the most important thing is that the techniques have become much more sensitive, right? So,
mhm,
in other words, 20, 30 years ago, it was very difficult to detect DNA, to detect proteins, to detect certain body secretions at crime scenes because there were little amounts. Today, through the advancement of technology, it's much more amenable to discover
mhm,
DNA, to discover protein, to discover blood using very advanced techniques.
mhm.
And that's why I've been very, very closely following the Murdaugh trial because I'm from Adelaide, South Australia. So I'm looking at it from outside the United States.
Mhm.
Been fascinating,
Yeah,
absolutely fascinating. It
it
really
is
has.
the lack. What strikes me the most in the Murdaugh case is the lack of tangible DNA that I would expect to see in a murder. Right?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
But we
And
can
so
talk about,
that's
you know,
that's either very, very clever or whoops, like, like that would have to be a really big whoops. I think it's mostly really, really clever things going on, but
I
there's just
think
not a lot there. Like the most as far as that kind of evidence would have been the particles of gunshot residue, not exactly gunshot residue from a hand or tangible, but what was left that could be any age inside
correct,
a garment that
correct.
possibly could have carried weapons, right? I mean,
100% correct. But
yeah.
the major problem that I see, sorry, and the reason for following the Murdoch trial, why I'm so interested in it, apart
Mhm,
from the forensics, is that the Murdoch trial is a very multi-layer, complex trial. But the
mhm,
murders themselves are not complex. They're
mm-mm.
not. They're
This
not. They're
is
really not. And
yeah,
I'm comparing this trial with the Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey cases, and the
mhm,
parallels are scary.
okay. Do you think the window of opportunity is one of the parallels, how small that was? Like
In terms of the ability for now, remember, I'm only speculating. I'm not accusing.
exactly. Yeah.
I'm not accusing Alex of having done
Right,
anything.
right.
And we do the same thing on foul
Mhm,
play when we're talking about Denny suspects, etc.,
mhm,
etc. But if Alex Murdoch was involved in murdering his wife and his son, he had a very narrow window of
mhm,
opportunity to do it, which is entirely, entirely possible.
mhm,
And that's why I focused very much on the forensic evidence that's been presented so far.
mhm.
And let me tell you right now, Claire, forensically, this case is a nightmare. It's a
I
nightmare.
did. I want you to speak on that. I want you to tell them what actually you are focusing on that you saw. I know what I saw. I know what they
Correct,
say in the chat and in my streams when I'm doing it. I want to
correct,
hear from you because you have a lot more expertise on what it actually means, what they're saying and doing. Where
correct.
where are you focusing on this evidence?
Correct. Well, basically, as any investigator would want to do, the investigator wants to put the suspect at the crime scene. They want to absolutely definitively prove that Alex fired the shots that killed his son, fired the shots that killed his wife, right? Now, we're talking about circumstantial evidence as opposed to direct evidence, right?
Okay. Can you
Unfortunately,
define both of those before we go on?
correct. Direct evidence means you've got an eyewitness, one eyewitness, multiple eyewitnesses. You've got a photograph, you've got a video, you've got an audio recording. You can absolutely definitively prove that your suspect committed the murder or murders. There's no dispute, right?
Mm-hmm.
None. You can't argue it. In the Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey case, it's exactly the same problem. Circumstantial evidence. Now, based on that circumstantial evidence, remember, both Stephen and Brendan Dassey got convicted and are
Mm-hmm.
spending life in prison. So, circumstantial evidence means you've got evidence that tends to suggest that your suspect had committed those crimes. It suggests,
Mm-hmm.
it's not definitive.
Mm-hmm.
So, hence, the state has to obtain a lot of circumstantial evidence and pile it on top of another, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you're not looking at one particular piece of forensic evidence, you're looking at a whole heap of forensic evidence, not only DNA, not only blood, fingerprints, gun smoke residue. You're now introducing something, it's like a digital DNA.
Mm-hmm.
You're introducing this.
The cell phone.
You
It is
introduce
it is the biggest piece of evidence, and all roads lead to the cell phones. All of their cell phones,
and
like.
also his car, and also his car as well. But
Mhm,
so for me, I went through the forensic evidence. I've been watching the trials. I've written down a lot of notes. Now, to be honest, Claire, if I was to do this case justice, what I normally do and what my team on Foul Play normally
mhm,
does is we go over all the transcripts all over again. We
mhm,
read the primary material, we would FOIA all the primary documents from the crime scene lab and analyze them. Because what's important is what they don't tell you as opposed to what they tell you, right? So it's important to get a good perspective. And let me tell you right now, Claire, the state crime lab, oh my God, did they make some mistakes? And,
yes.
and that is scary.
Yeah,
So
the defense has been going there on it too, so I think we're gonna hear more about it, soon.
Correct. Now,
Mhm,
to be fair, Claire, I'm one of the harshest critics on the Wisconsin State Crime Lab, the DNA analyst there,
mhm,
Cherie Lane. I was extremely, really upset with the way she carried out her forensics. However, in this case, the forensic scientists went overboard,
mhm.
completely overboard, to make sure they made no mistakes, because the defense is going to drive a Mack truck right through them,
Mhm.
including the way the investigation was done from the get-go. So it's
I was
very
gonna
flawed.
ask you on about that. How much evidence in actual, real, more circumstantial bits and pieces, footprints, impressions, even DNA. It was a rainy day. There was a hose. There was water all about.
Correct.
How much of that is actually
Well,
affecting, especially
a
with them
lot,
trampling all over
a
the
lot,
place.
a
20
lot,
lawyers, 20 lawyers showed up like
a lot.
within an
Correct.
hour.
Correct. One of the most important things, Clay, if I could just explain it,
Yeah.
uh, this case is a nightmare, and the reason why it's a nightmare is actually very simple. Alex, Maggie, and Paul are related.
Mhm.
They're family. So,
Mhm.
as a consequence of that, family members are going to touch each other, give DNA from one person to another, transfer DNA. These guys are hunters. I'm not sure whether Maggie had done any hunting or fired weapons, but both Paul and Alex handle weapons. They also handle ammunition. So, hence, if you find gun smoke residue on them, you're going to say, yeah, so what? We're at a hunting lodge. We fire weapons all the time. So it means that the actual crime scene is a potential nightmare. So people doing forensics would say,
Mhm.
okay, Claire, what do I expect to find? Right? If Alex had committed these double
Oops.
homicides, what do I expect to find? And you
Mhm.
know what the problem is? They're not finding it. they are not finding it. And
Mhm.
the answer is so obvious.
Oh,
What they
'cause it's clever because you know they're gonna be looking for it. That's why you can't find it. Cause like, you wanna
100% correct.
yeah, if you got
So
nothing to hide, give them the blue shirt. If you got nothing to hide, where are the sneakers? Yeah. If you got nothing to
correct,
hide, where are the guns? Yeah.
100% correct. So the thing is, for an investigator, the investigators that come onto a crime scene have to make sure that the crime scene is preserved under all circumstances. You cannot have people walking in and walking out. You cannot have a group of lawyers in the house trudging all over the place, because the greatest fear for any crime scene analyst, Claire, is
Mhm.
contamination of the crime scene, or
Uh-huh.
even worse, altering the crime scene. But I
Oh,
believe, despite all of that, Claire, I believe that there are strategic clues at the crime scene and at other locations that can help solve this case. And the
mhm.
thing that's going to tip the scales
The
is
phones.
this.
It's the cell phones. It's gonna
Ah,
convicted of murder by use of your cell phone. Yes, because some things were glaringly obvious. Like to me, what speaks the most, if I just take a moment, is the things
correct.
that are missing, the things that were not found. And like you
Correct.
said, the DNA, the blood splatter, the gunshot residue, the guns themselves, the key things that would definitely convict you, slam down, are all missing. Okay, but yet they've done a really good job at proving that they should be there because those murder weapons come from the property, have been used on the property repeatedly, and
This
they
is
had access to them on the property. It's like
this
it's like a who are you going to believe? The fact that it's missing or the fact that it's not there?
correct.
Reasonable doubt is going to be the biggest thing here. How much weight a jury says. They say, we really, really believe it. Did they do a good job of putting it in my head that, yes, this is the best possible scenario on how these murders occurred? I don't want to put a man away, but if he did it, he did it. It's a horrific crime, and they're going to
Oh,
be looking for justice too. But that
100%
word
correct.
circumstantial is such a biased word. Just to call it circumstantial evidence gives the jury room for reasonable doubt automatically. Would you agree?
It does,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't always work in that case. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, with Stephen Avery case, he was tried under circumstantial situation, and he got convicted. He got charged. He got put in prison for life, right? But Stephen and Brendan Dassey's cases are extremely complex. This case, there's a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could tell what Alex's attorneys are doing is they're saying, don't look here, look there, right?
Right.
So they're diverting your attention away from what actually happened that day.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of analysis. I've done a lot of study. I've looked at a lot of different YouTubers, etc., etc. And so I've come up to my own conclusions as to
Hmm.
what happened that day. But you're correct. At the moment, it is circumstantial evidence. But you said the right thing, Claire. It's what's missing that's important, right? And so remember, this guy, Alex, is an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
He's an attorney. He's a practicing attorney. He would hang around lawyers all the time. He's a
Mm-hmm.
smart, intelligent guy.
Mm-hmm.
His defense attorneys, they're two of the best. They're like savage bulldogs.
They are.
They don't care whether he committed the crime or not. I'm telling you right now,
It's the
Claire.
win. It's all the game for them. You can tell by how they're playing. I I can tell this how they're playing because Harpoolian has such a bulldog reputation, and he's
Correct,
doddering around there to throw them off, and then he comes in with that sneaky sniper question that you just can't get out of to get them
correct,
off of. I've been
correct.
watching, but also I've been watching them falter a little bit.
Oh,
How many
look,
times did Jim Griffin stick his foot in the door so that
correct.
it's wide open for BCE, which is what I call Crichton, big Crichton
Yes,
energy, Crichton Waters. I like his style.
he's
He's
good.
in for the win. These guys are big players only to the win for them.
Correct.
And
I'm
he goes and throws his whole body through that opening and goes, "Yo, I do believe you want my attention now, don't you,
correct.
Judge?" Yes.
100%, 100% correct.
Yeah.
But I must admit, Claire, there's just a couple of points. I love the judge. The
Oh, he's
judge is
wonderful.
in total control. He doesn't care about Harputian. He doesn't care about
He
Griffin.
doesn't.
He'll tell them to shut up and to sit down. This is my courtroom. This is my
Mm-hmm.
rules. Now, if you've ever followed the Stephen Avery trial,
Mm-hmm.
the judge there, Judge Willis, was completely inept and out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And the attorneys, the prosecuting attorneys for the state, were controlling the judge. Here, it's the other way around. The judge, he's got experience, he's got knowledge, he's very, very calm. He doesn't care about their reputations. He wants proper order in the courtroom. So, in that regard, it's been brilliant, right? He's controlled the courtroom and he's been very, very fair. And you're correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's the defense attorneys that have opened the door. Now the question is, Claire, have they done it deliberately or have they lost their minds?
You could ask everybody on in my Discord and privately, the Murder Minions. I say that all the time. I do not believe that that was accident. How could Jim Griffin mess up that many times and not Dick be giving him the evil eye from across the table, like constantly? I do believe that it is a setup. They want it out there in the right way, and it's a setup for appeal because, like first of all, Judge Newton, listen, he doesn't get appealed. He carefully walks that line with
Yes,
403 and 404B
yes,
testimony. He walked that line. He did it appropriately. He heard everything first. He knew what was coming in. He allowed the other time to eject while it was being listened to then, so that if they try to eject afterwards, he's like, hey, you better have a good one or you're in
correct.
trouble here.
Because
Um,
the
it's
judge said
it's
to them,
serious, yeah, but he's
he
got
said
a
to them,
good
I don't
point.
want an appeal. He said,
He's
I
got a
don't
good
want
point.
an appeal.
Right.
He
He
doesn't
said,
want an
if
appeal.
you're going to call him a family man with no issues with his family and everything's just hunky dory, what if somebody over here says not so? They have the right to say, wait a minute, there's a whole nother opinion about this man out here, and the jury deserves to hear it. And that's true. Unfortunately, that involved 100 charges for financial crimes and 18 other indictments that are pretty messy. Now, he
Correct.
was very careful what he let in. He let in only
Yeah.
judgments that are already done that Alex admitted to. Did you notice that?
Yes,
Satterfield.
correct.
That's Alex Murdaugh's own statements that hung him up there. Same
Correct.
thing with the Mallory Beach case. Alex Murdaugh's own statements, and then the estate actually settling with them and just leaving Alex there and everybody else. It actually spoke
Correct.
volumes. But in this case, it's not only the stuff that's missing, but how do you feel about the words that actually came out of Alex's mouth during the interviews? The stuff he was putting in there that he wanted them to know. That really
Correct.
stood out to me.
Correct. It says a lot about his character, but I think, from a forensic standpoint, we've got to put all that aside.
Yes.
We have to really put
Yep.
all of that aside because we know that Alex will never come home. He's going to stay in prison for another
Mm-hmm.
100 plus years. But the question is, did he pull the trigger? Did he kill his son? Did he kill his wife? That's the important thing. And what you notice is that there's a very narrow window of opportunity for him to have committed this double homicide. And I believe that he actually did have enough time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the important thing here, Claire, is when you think about it, he lured both he lured both Paul and Maggie to the property.
Mm-hmm.
He had spent a considerable amount of time with his son going around the property. Now, I'll tell you right then and then, either his son and him had a very harsh, terse conversation. Something triggered in Alex. He went from caring, loving father to murderous intentions.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, he had to deal with two people. Now, I'm only speculating here, of course. If he was going to commit this murder, he had to do it in a way that he could control both Paul and Maggie. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe he found the opportunity to do it. Where did it happen? It happened right at the kennels,
Mm-hmm.
right? And here's the critical thing, Claire, that millions of people are talking about around the world. Alex was not aware that his son had videotaped the conversation.
Exactly. It could have been perfect, except for his alibi got blown apart by a snapshot video with his
And,
voice on it.
and like I said, this.
This is
And
what did it. Mhm.
isn't it remarkable that his son, Paul, from the grave, pointed the finger to his father.
Mhm.
That is so, so scary because
It
Alex had no idea that his
Mhm.
son had taken that little video. And of course, we all know who's on that video, right?
Mm.
All three of them are on that video. But what's important is this: right next to the kennel is where Paul got murdered, right next to the kennel in the
Mhm.
feed room. And if you notice, if you listen on that little Snapchat video, Maggie is saying about the dog Bubba having a chicken,
Yeah, a
right?
guinea. Yeah, she says guinea, and they correct her. Like they're adamant about correcting her about it
Correct.
being a
And
chicken. Yeah.
it's very likely that she started running after Bubba.
Mhm.
So look at this. Look at this. You've now got speculation, of course. You've got Maggie now running after the dog, separate from Paul.
Mhm.
Now, how do you know that a little ruse wasn't done from Alex to say, "Hey, Paul, we've got a medicine chest, medicines in the feed room. Why don't you go get something and we'll put it on the dog's tail?" So, in other words, to entrap him
Mhm.
in the feed room. So now think about this, Claire. You've got the son in the feed room, isolated. You've got the mother, Maggie, running after the dog in a different, close by, but in a different location. It's clear to me, if Alex had committed these horrendous crimes, that he already had placed the weapons in strategic spots, the
Mhm.
shotgun and the 300 blackout.
Yeah,
So
that's been a common. Yeah, everybody agrees because they're hunters. Okay, he could have had the rifle there. Paul could have actually had his favorite blackout with him
yeah,
anyway,
and
because they were going around the property. He could have been going duck hunting afterward, whatever he was going to do. He had it with him all the time anyway. Those guns were there, and the fact that he used two of them was more opportunistic than perhaps planned, knowing that Paul also had a gun there. You know,
correct.
um,
This, Claire, this is the tragedy. The
mm-hmm,
tragedy is they're a gun family. They've got
mm-hmm,
weapons everywhere. They go shoot hogs and other wildlife at night time. That's why they've got the
mm-hmm,
night scopes.
mm-hmm,
So this way, we've already established, the investigators have established, hey, there are weapons everywhere. And
mm-hmm.
what did Alex actually say? Yeah, my son's got a rifle here. We got a rifle there. So Alex carrying a gun, a weapon,
Mm-hmm.
they would have thought, what's the big deal?
No.
But if a random stranger walks in and they see a random stranger
Mhm.
walk in with weapons, you're going to be in a state of panic,
And
right?
what supports that is actually the Snapchat video. No other dogs are actually upset with anybody else around. It's obviously only three of them there. Nobody
100%.
walking up because that I believe it's 8:49 is the Snapchat video, and the window starts right there, just a few minutes to where
That's
the phones go dead. So, like, if
correct.
anybody was walking up, that's it's kind of separate from the house and the driveway for anybody to come from anywhere. The dogs are
Correct.
going to see them and sense them. So, anybody coming up, anybody else there, those dogs would be going crazy, and they weren't. They were not.
Correct.
That
And
that struck out to me. Yeah.
the scary thing is you have a very narrow window of
Mhm.
opportunity between being alive and being brutally murdered. A
Mhm.
very narrow window of opportunity. And there's one person who could control the crime scene, just one,
Mhm.
and that was Alex, right? Once he
Mhm.
had committed the act, he was in total control, right? Look where the property is, in the middle
Mhm.
of nowhere.
Mhm.
He's got no security cameras back there. He knows. He knows. He goes, if I'm going to commit this homicide, whether he committed it on the spur of the moment or he had thought or something
Oh,
switched
oh,
in his mind,
right.
he had to make
Or
sure that he wasn't caught on camera, right?
we actually have a couple of accidental theories where it started as an accident and ended up as a murder. Like, yeah, in the
Well,
feed
what's
room, like you said, but
Yep,
about the dog, Bubba, Alex being mad about the dog, and
yep,
Paul having a gun on him, and Alex having a gun on him, and then Paul already knows that Alex is doing drugs again. That has been documented by text message back and forth that little detective Paul was already
Correct.
onto something. So there's some kind of conversations going on behind the scenes between
Yes.
Paul and Maggie and
Yes.
Alex and Paul. We know family dynamics. We know that's happening. We don't have the
Correct.
proof, but speculative we could say.
Correct.
So when he goes after Bubba, because you can hear in his voice just a little bit. He sounded a little
Yes.
aggravated to me.
Yes.
So, and Paul's like, oh, no, you won't. And he just like looks at him with the gun and he just gets startled. And the first shot's in the shoulder. That's not a death shot to me.
No, it's
So, if
not.
he's planning a murder, I think that one's accidental. Then the next one, he falls back from Paul actually. After being shot, the forensics pathologist said he walked. He took a couple steps
Yes, he
towards his
did.
assailants. That would
Yes.
scare me if I just shot somebody and they had a blackout 300. I think I would freak out. Fall back, and that's where the other shot is coming from underneath and
Correct.
blowing off the back of
And,
his head.
and, and
So
I
that's
thought,
how the accidents start. Like there's some theory within my group about like the accident there. We all want Bubba to testify, jokingly. Like
correct, correct.
we know the dog could solve this case in a
Oh, there's
minute.
no doubt.
Okay, we just know it,
And
But
in the Stephen Avery case, if
mhm,
Bear, which is the
the
dog,
bear.
talked,
Mhm,
we would know everything what happened.
mhm.
But I don't believe that it was an accident. I
You
really
think
don't.
that first shot in the shoulder was deliberate?
It's
You,
no question about it. I mean, think about it. These guys are hunters. They know how to carry a weapon. You
mhm,
never carry a weapon in a position to fire, especially if there's your son within 3 feet of you. They know
mhm,
how to carry weapons. They've used weapons for a long period of time. They know that the gun obviously was loaded, I think with 2 rounds, 2 different rounds.
mhm.
I reckon that Alex, I'm not saying he did anything, but if he was the killer, I believe that Alex was aiming for his heart
Oh,
to
I
kill
see, and he
to
just a
kill
bad
him.
shot. Okay. Mm.
He missed him
Or he
by
moved. He
yeah,
moved, yeah.
he
He
missed him
was a
by that.
moving target. Yeah. Okay. Mhm.
Paul could have easily been startled to think, holy shit, there's a gun barrel 3 feet next to me,
Mhm.
right? So the fact that, and that's why I really am remarkable by the forensic pathologist. Brilliant. That lady was
Mhm.
brilliant.
Yes.
She said he had stippling, which
Mhm.
meant that with the powder burns and he had his arm down, he had no defensive wounds, which means that if you see your own father, you're not
Mhm.
going to go, holy shit, what are you doing?
You're
He
not.
was completely startled thinking, that's my
What?
dad.
No.
And he's got a shotgun and it's 3 feet from me and he discharged it,
And he
right?
was confused, right? He was startled, confused. He's not actually understanding. I get it.
By the
Yeah.
drips of blood, you know where he was standing in the room. They
Mhm.
fell at 20 degrees. So you know exactly where he was standing. You could
Mhm.
tell by the damage that was behind him. The buckshot or whatever it was went straight through him.
Mhm.
Straight through him, hit the glass, hit the bird cage, did damage. You can work out the angle.
Mhm. And she
Whoever
did a good job, but then did
magnificent job.
and I'm with you on that. And I'm quite surprised that the defense immediately took a completely opposite
I had to.
angle. And
They had to.
they're trying to say it's an exit wound instead of an entry
That
wound.
was
And
laughable.
they have a forensics pathologist. They're bringing their own pathologist to
Yeah,
argue this during the defense.
yeah.
So you
Well,
might have to come back and we have to talk about the defense's
that's what I'm
evidence when you come back.
that's if I don't smash my iPad. But the amazing thing is that Dick Harpootlian
Mhm.
was even trying to come with the scenario of a suicide.
Yeah,
And
because
the
the guns got up and walked away in a suicide
and
murder
the
pact. Yes, okay.
exactly. If it's a
Yes.
murder suicide, those weapons aren't going anywhere, right?
Mhm,
And if you're Alex, if it was a murder suicide, you'll say, you're not going to find any of my prints on those weapons. I was nowhere near. But here's the critical clue, right? Now we know that the second shot to Paul was the fatal one, and it went behind him and took the top of his head off.
mhm,
It blasted his brain out, hit the roof, fell down. Paul immediately fell down to the ground. He was instantly dead.
mhm.
Instantly dead. Now, think about this. You've seen high speed video of a watermelon being shot by a shotgun blast.
Yes.
It
Mhm,
literally explodes.
mhm,
If have a look at the Zapruder film with John F. Kennedy's head
mhm, mhm,
exploding. ejector goes everywhere. A fine mist goes everywhere. When they interviewed the people that were in the limousine, they said we were covered in brain,
Yes.
blood,
Hmm.
muck, everywhere.
Look at Jackie O. When she got to the hospital, she was covered. Yes.
100%. I've
Mm,
studied the Zapruder film for a long period of time because I was into JFK.
mm,
But here's the point. It meant that if Alex had fired that shot, he would be covered in ejector,
mhm.
brain material, blood, fluids, you name it. There isn't any. There's none.
There's none
That's
on him, but
there's none on.
couldn't he have gotten rid of it though?
Correct. Correct.
We've got an active hose. We have a duck family. For all I know, he was wearing waders in a waterproof rain jacket when it happened.
Whatever he did, you can
Hmm.
explain the entire scenario by him actually changing his hosing down, cleaning himself down, maybe
Hmm.
even having a quick shower,
And those
getting rid of.
clothes magically disappearing, like no one can find them. Not the maid, not anybody in the house, not Alex. They're all looking for them. You think he could give them to them if it would just make him innocent that they found the shirt. There was nothing on
Correct.
it. But
Correct.
it stands out more that it's not available.
Correct. So that's why in this particular case we're talking about circumstantial evidence because
Hmm.
we're actually missing that important piece of time of material. We're missing his clothing, his
Hmm.
shirt, his pants, his shoes, right? And they would have, and people have done crime scene reproductions.
Hmm.
He would have high velocity blood spatter, and that's where the state stuffed it up
Hmm.
completely, right?
Yeah.
So they went to the grand jury to say, we found high velocity blood spatter, which is exactly what you would find. If your head explodes, you've
Hmm.
got fine mists of blood shooting in all directions, traveling very, very quick. You've got no control.
Right.
And it'll cover his face, his body, his clothes,
Hmm.
right? And when they examined the white shirt, they said, we found blood spatter because they did a presumptive test.
Test.
Oh my God. And then after doing the presumptive test, they did a confirmatory test. I think it was using the hemocritin or hemostat,
Hmm.
one of those tests to test definitively for the presence of hemoglobin. And oh my God, they didn't find any.
And
So
that just blew it all apart because
that's it.
that wasn't the shirt, by the way, people. like
That's
like
correct.
okay, I do not believe that the shirt that he was wearing for the interview was in what he had
No,
on when he was at the
no,
kennels. That's
no.
obvious.
Could you imagine?
It's yeah.
Could you imagine him going to visit his mum, covered in ejector and
No,
blood matter, and
no.
sitting next to her in the bed?
Mhm.
No, of
And
course
it's
not.
this, and it's also all the staging that was done in the bathroom and everything. Like you got a pair of pants. All right, excuse me, but he is a man. You don't just drop your pants as the only thing in the bathroom that you leave there. Everything else would be there too. It's not like you're going to pick up 2/3 of it and leave that just to piss off the
Correct.
maid or your wife. You're not going
Correct.
to do it. If you're going to bother picking it up, you're going to pick it all up.
Correct.
It's the staging it, but oh, you're not that clever. You see, when you act like you're the smartest person in the room, which Alex Murdaugh thinks he is, and he's got good reason to. 20 years of embezzlement and
Oh
nobody
yes.
caught him. Family,
Correct.
friends, partners, every single person in his life, nobody caught him. He's got good reason to have a big head, think he's so smart, but
But
not that much.
Claire, the defense is saying we know he's a bad man. Did he have his finger on the trigger on both triggers? Right. That's
Yeah.
the central issue.
That's
Right.
why I want to hear a statement like this. And I know they're not allowed to say it, but I hope they do in closing arguments. I don't have that fingerprint on that trigger because I got a smart man who knows not to leave the gun. Period. That's all I want them to say to the jury. I want them to think about the fact of what's missing because
Correct.
it's reasonable. It I'm not like I'm not a genius about this stuff. That is like smacking me in the head like I don't know what. It's so obvious. What is missing is all the
Correct.
things that need to be missing so that you've
Correct.
got reasonable doubt. Who knows more about reasonable doubt than anything? A really good lawyer. Like to me, I'm just like
What they're
can you
arguing.
not see it? Can't you see it?
But
Yeah.
now you think about this, Claire, right? The state got in a fantastic pathologist who did the autopsy, everything. What did the defense team bring in? A guy that said, How did you determine the time of death? Put my arm underneath their armpit,
I'm
and oh my
sorry.
God, they were cold. So hence the time of death. It could have been 8 o'clock, could have been
The-
9 o'clock, could have been 10 o'clock. And I'm thinking to myself, you have got to be kidding. This is a major murder trial. And he comes in
exactly.
and he puts his hand
And
underneath.
that proved to be right there when that was their first witness that Harpoolians all ready for them for Alex Murdaugh to just claim I really had a bad defense lawyers, like they weren't helping me at all. Like at all.
Ineffective,
Yes.
ineffective assistance to counsel.
Exactly, because the guy took the temperature. He's going to narrow the window down by 3 hours, by the way, because he stuck his hand under their armpit. I was
And
beside myself. I was
they
like,
said,
why?
what, why didn't you use a rectal thermometer? Because, oh, well, I didn't want to pull down their pants and, take.
Everyone uses a rectal thermometer. That's
What the
standard.
hell?
Yes.
What the hell? So normally what would happen is, from what I've heard from people who do autopsies, they do a temperature probe in the liver, and they can determine temperature.
Because that is the most accurate, because they
Yeah,
have lever temp and how fast that it cools down, because it's
metabolism,
a blood organ.
everything's correct.
You see,
Blood
this is
rich
what
organ,
everybody needs to hear, the science of it. That
correct,
is much more accurate. And this
correct,
hokey
correct.
guy who agreed he wasn't a medical, he was not an expert coroner, and he didn't take any classes to be one, but he did have some
That
medical.
was just
So he
just
got the job. And he
correct,
knows how to take a
correct.
temperature with his hand.
I know that. Well, the thing is how the defense are going to go about this. They're going to attack SLED. They're going to attack all the forensic evidence. That's their approach. They're going to say the investigation was so sloppy. The forensic scientist was all crap. You can't trust any of this. How can you possibly convict this man on this type of forensic evidence?
Mhm.
The whole freaking thing, Claire, can be explained. The double homicide can be explained by Alex cleaning himself up.
That's it. And that's why the very first thing Dick Harpootlian objected to day one of the trial was the fact they mentioned the word hose. They mentioned the
Correct.
word hose, and that
Correct.
man jumped up out of his chair. And I
Correct.
make notes. I'm like, that's something.
Correct.
And it's because of opportunity. That hose was running. They knew they had testimony that somebody else usually runs it. If you
That's
prove
it.
there was opportunity to clean up, the
So,
whole thing starts to unravel.
so Claire,
Yes.
what did I say? Who
Hmm.
is in control of the crime scene after the murders are done?
Alex
One
Murdaugh.
person.
What
Alex.
it let us be very specific. The only person left alive at the scene
That's
is the
correct.
one in control, and it
That's
was
correct.
Alex Murdaugh. And he
That's
already blew his alibi apart by he made all it. And
correct.
even you say the phones are like the key thing here, even though you're with genetics and
Correct.
all about the science, you still, like myself, are focused on it. It's about the phones, like definitely. And the other thing with the phones is who Alex contacted. Alex actually kind of deleted everything from his phone, turned his
Yes.
phone off. But who is
Yes.
he contacting? Anybody that contacted Paul or Maggie's phone during the same period of time. Why would you do that? Unless you're trying to cover with people, you don't want them looking too close. You don't want them asking, why aren't you answering your phone, Paul? Like you
Correct.
need more time, right? I know I'm speculating here and I'm making a whole big scenario like a true crime drama, like from his Discovery ID or whatever. But to me, that makes sense. These things speak
Correct.
louder to me than the actual what the defense is trying to say as what
Correct.
the
I,
instant.
I don't think the jury is that dumb.
I
I
don't
think
either. I want them to actually say the defense is right. There is no clothing found with DNA on it because Alex
correct.
Murdaugh made sure. I
Correct.
want to hear that because Alex made sure there wasn't. There
Yep.
are no guns because Alex made sure there wasn't. We don't have the shoes he wore because Alex made sure there wasn't. I
And
mean,
their
he's a
forensics proved it.
right.
That's the important thing. Their forensics actually proved it, right? Because remember, we're talking about a narrow time frame. We're
Mhm.
not talking about he had days, he had weeks. Oh no, he had to act instinctively. He knew he had to clean up and he knew he had to go to his mother's. So
He
what he
did.
was doing was very, very clever. He took his wife's phone.
Mhm.
And the reason why he took his wife's phone, because he was establishing his alibi. So he had his wife's phone next to him, ringing her up while he was in the car to ensure that the calls went through, right? Oh,
Mhm.
look, I rang up my wife. I rang up my wife several times. I've sent a text. I've got no response. Now
Mhm.
think about this, Claire. Why didn't he turn around and go back and say, Jeepers, I haven't heard anything from Maggie. That's a bit weird. Maggie
Mhm.
always answers the phone. No, 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 no. He had to establish his alibi by going to see his mum. So what does he do? On the road that he's traveling, he slows down, throws
Pauses.
the phone, throws his wife phone.
Mhm.
So what he did, he caused a diversion, right? So the defense are going to say, well, there's maybe two shooters here. Why would they use a shotgun? Why would they use a blackout? Well, think about this. If his wife, Maggie, was at some distance away from him, how are you going to get right close to her with a shotgun, right?
Mhm.
And all Maggie had to do was turn around, take a picture, or send a text. Help, I'm being attacked. Once it's in the cloud, once it's in a record, boom, you're gone. Or she could have even recorded it.
Mhm.
That makes sense why he checked her phone
I know,
thinking,
like he did,
oh God,
definitely.
right?
Even
Paul,
better, but then he deleted the messages. Like that
yeah,
confuses me because that's a big red flag there that he was hiding something. It could have
correct.
been an accident because he was doing so much at the time with those phones.
No,
He,
he deliberately moved a chunk of
mhm.
his
Yeah,
actual.
but the other people that he was contacting, they were able to
Yes,
piece all that together. So it's
but
quite damning. They know
but
he contacted the friend, Paul's friend, to make sure he wasn't
yes,
still contacting Paul. They know,
yes,
but here's what he didn't do that speaks, and I hope it gets mentioned because they haven't yet, except for like in Twitter and in my group. I haven't seen it in the court. I'm waiting for closing arguments though. Who didn't Paul call
his
after the
son.
911? He didn't call, but he didn't call.
But
He
he
called
didn't call his.
Buster during the alibi time, but not after the death. And he didn't call Maggie's parents or her sister.
Correct,
And that is where Maggie came from to come be with him. He knows she's staying there.
correct,
He knows they're going to be looking for him.
correct.
That speaks such volumes to me that
But
I,
but
I that kind of leans towards the either overwhelming guilt and unable to accept it because you're going to know that these people that know them the most, the pain that's going to come through that he wasn't ready to hear that. Like,
no,
you know what I mean?
and
The personal aspect of it, he's still too busy creating and protecting himself. He couldn't hear that,
correct,
right? Hmm.
correct. And here's the problem, right?
The phone.
Most of us are addicted to our phones. I know I am. I sleep with it
Uh-huh.
right next to me. I'm always on it. I'm always looking at it. That's the killer
Hmm.
because Paul, also Maggie, were always very quick to respond, right?
Hmm.
His friends of Paul's were ringing him up, sending him texts, whatever, whatever.
Hmm.
He would respond immediately. What is incredible is that everything stops. Boom.
Hmm.
Everything stops. Phone activity stops. Calls are
Together
coming in.
at the same time.
Yes,
Mhm,
but no response back. So therefore, the state can work out. This is the time period where something nefarious happened, i.e., two homicides. Now, after I believe that Paul was killed first because he's the biggest threat to Alex,
mhm,
being a male, being someone who knows how to hunt, knows how to use weapons. The last thing you want is for Paul to run around with a gun,
mhm.
right? Because I'm sure he's pretty good. Because remember, they go hunting for
They do.
wildlife,
Mhm,
hogs. He knows how to use a 300 blackout, and they're
mhm.
very,
And
very scary
all
weapons.
his friends testified that he has that blackout with him all
Yeah,
the time.
all the time.
Mhm,
It's like a buddy. It's like a best
mhm,
friend. So to
mhm,
him to use one of those weapons would have taken him seconds. Boom. So the father, if Alex committed these horrible crimes, had to get rid of the son first. Once he got rid of the male threat, and think where Paul was shot. He was entrapped. That's critical. He was entrapped. He had nowhere to go. Even if
mhm,
he had to go down on his haunches, he was trapped. He was going to die in that
mhm.
room.
Right.
Maggie would have heard the shots thinking, what the hell, and started coming down this way
Mhm.
because you could tell she was coming to see what the hell had happened.
Exactly.
Either she
Especially
saw,
if conversations have happened about drug use and back into the problem. Yeah.
she
Mhm.
would have seen her son or somebody lying on the ground thinking, oh my God. At the same time, her husband had a 300 blackout and was starting to shoot at her.
Mhm.
And what's incredible is that there are a group of guys. I watch them from the Mob Crew and
Mhm.
also True Crime Web.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. They do
They did the
reconstruction.
reenactment. I saw that. I
They do
actually gave everybody
reconstructions,
the video
right?
link. Yeah.
They do
Mhm.
reconstructions. So as Maggie is seeing her husband is shooting at her with a 300 blackout.
Mhm.
And you notice what he did? He incapacitated her.
Yes.
He didn't go for a headshot first. He went the lower torso. And
Mhm.
you could tell because of the stippling, which meant that he was really close to his wife when he was shooting her. And she obviously ran around the corner. And you could tell that he was continuing firing at his wife because they could tell where the bullets lodged, one in the chicken coop, one
Mhm.
in the bed, dog bed.
Yep.
So they work out trajectories.
Mhm.
Plus, with the blackout and also the shotgun, the ejected shells go at a certain direction and a certain distance. So these guys, the True Crime and Mob Crew, worked out,
Mhm.
that means he was standing here because the shells were ejected this distance. So he actually mapped out exactly what Alex, if he had done this, was
Mhm.
doing. He circled his wife when she was on the ground. He did the coup de grace shot and blew her brains out.
Yeah, just to make sure, because as Dr.
No
Reamer had
witnesses.
said, she was probably still moving, probably in pain, and he needed to make sure
No
that it was done.
witnesses.
Right.
You know what is remarkable? Sorry, Claire.
No,
What
go
did
ahead.
he keep on telling the investigators? Are they dead? Are they confirmed dead? He kept on asking that. You
And
think
yet, and yet he says he checked the bodies, but he had not a mark on him. That's what really
no,
gets me. Why is he telling everybody? Does he think that that's what people wanted to hear? That he
the
checked the
only,
bodies? He
no,
would have had 19 seconds to get from his car,
he,
grab a gun, and go.
correct,
What? Um,
correct. He didn't have time. He didn't have time. The
And
only
how
thing,
did he check for a pulse when his arms are underneath him and his head is blown out? He doesn't have a neck at the
correct.
point of to check an artery. How was he checking Paul's pulse, which he said he tried to do on both bodies?
No,
Eh,
no. So what
eh,
what he did, it's an incredible ruse, right? And that's how to trick the forensic experts to say, I touched them. So you're going to find my DNA on them. It's non-nefarious. And that's why I said, Claire, remember right at the start, this case is a nightmare because they're family. They're
They are.
family.
They
So
are
when you're
because.
looking at forensic
Mhm,
evidence, what is important, what's not important. But I went through all the forensic data that
mhm,
that lady went through, and I wrote down a ton of notes and everything like that. Basically, the DNA information was a bust. There was
mhm.
nothing there, and then everyone's making a hoo ha about those three alleles that were found underneath Maggie's
Yeah, that could
fingernails.
be anything.
Any, look, with three alleles, right? You can have probably several 100 million people having those three alleles around the world. Can you
It could
come
have.
to any conclusion?
Okay. Yeah, she hugged her son, and her hand was on the back of his neck. I hugged my grandchildren, the boy. I hold his head. Okay, I hold his
Correct.
head when I kiss him on the cheek. Could not Paul's own alleles be under her nails in that case?
Well, what
Come on.
what what they do, Claire, is they've got to take DNA standards from
Hmm.
everybody,
You
including the
think they
deceased.
eliminated Paul
No,
already?
no
Yeah.
question. No
Okay.
question.
Hmm.
Right. So what they do is they get DNA samples from everybody, any potential person, alive or
Hmm.
dead, who could have had access to the crime scene. Right. So therefore they can say, right, we eliminate this person, this person. Oh, but when I did the forensic testing underneath the fingernail scrapings, I found three alleles from a male, and with the results that I've got of all the people that I've tested, the computer said, oh, those three alleles match CB row, right? But there's no, you don't have a full genomic profile. You have three alleles, which means throw it out.
Hmm. Thrown
And
out.
you've got all these people on the internet going, oh my God, it's significant. She touched somebody, the killer. And no,
It's
because they
not.
checked it, they checked
How
her
long
nails.
does it last? Tell them how long those nails they could have been under there too. Like
Oh,
it,
but basically, if you have somebody else's DNA
mm-hmm,
underneath your fingernails, you normally have to scratch them, right? When you
mm-hmm,
scratch somebody, I mean, you can have touch DNA, true. You can transfer DNA from one person to the next, but underneath your fingernails, you literally almost have to scratch someone. You get their skin
mm-hmm.
underneath your fingernails. When they do a scrapings, they get a profile. But here, they only got a partial profile of 3 alleles. You present that to the FBI, they'll throw you out.
They will.
You need,
It's
you need
not.
you need
Yeah, you
20
can't.
loci, and 20 loci have got 2 alleles at each
Mm-hmm,
at each loci, which means you're looking at 40 alleles to say, yep, you're Claire, you're Dr. Silkman, you're people in chat, blah, blah,
mm-hmm.
blah. With 3 alleles, you start laughing, you go, get out of here.
Yeah. What?
But if you don't understand DNA, you've got all these conspiracy theories thinking, oh my God,
Yeah.
Claire had actually touched the killer. No.
No, no. That's I was thinking it was because number one, the defense only touched on it lightly and didn't make a big deal about it. So that told me, hey, it's not because even if it was anywhere to go, they would have jumped on it like I don't know what. And
No,
also like even the even the prosecution kind of poo-pooed it all away and kind of had the explanation that it really wasn't as significant and anyone would
no.
make it up. Although the media, you're right, the media and everybody else is like running with it like it's gonna
Correct.
solve the case, but they got a better
Correct.
chance of talking to Bubba, you're telling me,
Correct.
than that solving the case. Okay. Okay, so that's good. What
Unfortunately,
mhm,
unfortunately, the DNA is a bust,
right.
right? So what?
Yeah. So
Sorry, Claire.
yours, you see no significant DNA or evidence that you would normally see that's actually going to help them right now with this
Not
case.
at, not at this stage, but that doesn't mean that they can't keep doing forensics.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a very interesting podcast yesterday in which a lady, a forensic scientist, had developed this technique. I think it's called the Bartoli method,
Mm-hmm.
whereby what they do is they take shell casings and other small items and they put them in a buffer. They allow elution and then they purify using an MVAC system for cells. And she's saying, well, what you do, right? The killer had to put in the cartridges, right? The killer had to put in the cartridges, get the cartridges, soak them, get DNA from them, and let's see who touched the cartridges,
Well,
right?
aren't they saying that Maggie did, that they did find Maggie's DNA, that she may have loaded one of those guns? Like,
But but here's the problem, Claire. They all touched the
the
ammunition.
bullets, because they're going by touch DNA instead of what you're saying, soak DNA. And that's a clear you got to keep that in mind. That's
Correct,
different testing, different ways of removing DNA, and also gives you different
correct.
and better results, maybe
The
more
impact,
definitive or
correct.
just the guessing, because she could have touched those bullets at any time. From
That's
what we
correct.
saw in the feed room and in the gun room and everywhere else, there
Correct.
are boxes of casings
They're
of
everywhere.
bullets to just load your gun at any time you want.
That's correct.
So she could have touched it at any time, and then the bullet that they used could have been one that she
Correct.
touched, and they could
And
have loaded it themselves. If they were wearing gloves, there'd be no touch
that's
DNA,
it.
right?
That,
And
and
without
that's
that test, we wouldn't find it. So yeah, it looks
correct.
like you and I got to contact Creighton Waters and ask him what's going on here, because like
Well, put it this way. Put it this way. Put it this
that's a joke, people. I don't really seriously think we're all that. I was joking, okay?
Well, the thing is, once they find the shirt,
Oh, they're never going to find
even
this
if
shirt.
even
Smokehouse. Why do they keep mentioning Smokehouse and nobody brings up the Smokehouse? Like, we're never going to find that shirt. Those sneakers are
no,
rubberized. Like,
they're
they're
gone too.
gone.
They,
Okay. Those guns, they're buried somewhere. They're in a duckweeds. They're with the
they're
ducks.
gone.
Okay. We're
They're gone.
never going to see that stuff again.
They're gone. So
Yeah.
the way I see it, Claire, the forensic evidence in this particular case has been very good, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
limiting, because it's quite clear because he's a father,
Mm-hmm.
that's his son, that's his wife, the mixing up of gun smoke residue. So
Mm-hmm.
what? DNA. So what? You've got to find something from that crime scene that points directly to Alex, and that is high velocity blood spatter,
Mm-hmm.
right? High
Which we
velocity
can't
blood
enter, and we
spatter.
couldn't enter that shirt. And we
That's
couldn't,
right.
and we're not going to find it because the shirt he was wearing, which may have been over that white shirt or the shirt he changed into earlier,
Correct.
we're never going to find what he was wearing because it's
Correct.
gone.
That's why the jury in this case have to make that leap. Some of them will say, "You betcha." Others will go, "Oh no, I'm too scared. I can't make that leap. I can't find him guilty."
Well,
You know what I'm trying to say?
do you think they have enough based on the fact that he had the partners meeting that day and knew what was coming down the pike? He knew Mark Tinsley was about to expose him in Discovery, all his bank accounts. He knew the jig was up. He knew. The only one who knows all of his crimes is himself. So what happened that day and that week? He knew the jig was up. He knew what was coming. Maybe not Maggie, maybe not Paul. But Maggie, now we're hearing testimony. She was squawking about the money. Why don't you just settle the beach case? This is ruining our family. We need to teach Paul
Correct.
the right thing to do. You
Correct.
know,
Because it
so
was
there's
gonna.
like butting heads,
Yes.
okay, as to what to
Yes.
do. Now we got Paul going around like, Dad, don't cheat on Mom. Dad, stop doing those pills. Dad, I'm the
Yep.
apple of your eye. Why don't you listen to
Yep.
me?
Hundred
Because
percent correct.
everybody says that Alex and Paul, like he adored Paul. Paul was it. So if Paul starts talking like Maggie, as far as let's settle, let's just get done with this, let's move on, we can be good people. When you're a
Correct.
bad person, it is not what you want to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is a multi-layered cake.
Mm.
It's like an onion. You got to peel one layer at a time. But
Mm-hmm.
there's no doubt that there were many extraneous factors that all coalesced together
Mm-hmm.
on June the 7th, 2021. Right?
Right.
Everything came to a head. And Lord knows what his son and Maggie had spoken to Alex about, right? You don't know what they had spoken about, right?
We just see little hints
Flip.
about key things. Maggie
Yeah,
says to someone, Alex is acting fishy. I don't want to go.
correct.
Paul
Correct.
says,
Correct.
yeah, Dad's been doing drugs. Mom knows you've been doing drugs again.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And
We
then
do see little bits of evidence of Harpullian's happy family thing is not
no,
exactly there if you
no,
really look.
no. And then you've got
If it
cousin Eddie.
was there, it
You've got
was
cousin
in
Eddie. Claire,
shaking a
you've got
little.
cousin Eddie.
Yeah, yeah.
So it goes to show this. There's something seriously wrong with Alex. He's
Mm-hmm.
worried. It cannot be right. He's
Mm-hmm.
just lost. Let's pretend there were ninja assassons that came in,
In
took
rubber
out Paul.
suits. Don't forget the rubber suits because there's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
DNA. Yeah.
forensic suits. Took out Paul. Took out Maggie. How did Alex walk out
And how did
unscathed?
he not see them? And how does he
All
not know who they were? And how did he
this.
not see a thing? Like,
Yep.
and he was, especially since he was right there
Yeah.
4 to 5 minutes before it happened. He had to see something.
Correct. And
He had to.
that's why, Claire, the time frame is narrow. We're
It
talking
is.
about 4 to 5 minutes where all the
Mm-hmm.
mayhem and murder took place. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe the True Crime Web and the Mob Crew did a time reconstruction
Mm-hmm.
on how long it would have taken to kill both of them. And it's under a minute, I believe. It's a short amount of
It
time.
is. When we go around it, like we're saying, the most it would have took was 3.5, and that's if he was like scared and scattered and boom, 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 like if things were paced out or he had to chase her. There's also the tire print that she ran up next to the vehicle, which means he
Yeah,
drove out to the kennels to save time. Let's be clear,
yeah.
people. He didn't walk out there like he said.
No.
He drove out there. There are things that like point in the direction. So I want to ask you a very direct question about this, and then if you have said what you want to say about the evidence, I'd like to give you some questions that they've been asking from
Oh,
the chat. But the one I want to ask prominently is how well do you think the state, how well or not well, do you think the state has presented this case with all the trouble that they've had, with what they had to work with?
I think the state made a couple of big mistakes. And by that, I mean they spent a lot of time looking at the financial issues, the
Mm-hmm.
financial troubles. They really didn't need to do that, although the defense actually brought a bit of that in themselves and the judge
Mm-hmm.
allowed it to a certain degree. They should have been much more succinct in all the material that was the financial crisis that Alex was confronted with. They probably needed one or two people to set up what the sting was, right? How he
Mm-hmm.
was defrauding the money. Having that young boy from Saddlefield, that was powerful.
Right.
I looked at him, I almost started to cry. How the hell can someone like Alex got millions of dollars and stuck it in his own pocket? That said a
Mm-hmm.
lot about him. He had a good scheme going on. He had a very good scheme, but he wasn't the only one. And I believe that the state did the best that they could with the forensic evidence. I believe that the DNA analysis, that lady, man, she
You
could have.
mean I'm
I've
trying
got,
to
I've
think of
got,
her name. You mean
I've
the
got
one who actually did the analysis, not the one who did
Zara,
the
Zara,
actual collection. She
yeah,
did,
Zara Zapata,
Tara, yeah,
yeah,
Zapata, right? She,
Zapata.
sh I could, I would never have her as a witness. She said nothing about nothing. Absolutely.
Zo- yeah, Zara Zapata was so scared that she had to keep on quoting gazillion, billion,
Hmm.
quadrillion, reptilian. And I'm thinking to myself, listen, lady, just do one PowerPoint slide, summarize the results, and say significant, significant, not significant. That's all. And if they ask you what it means that it's a one in so many chances of it not being this, or it's one in so many chances of not being that. Don't read out but you know why she did it? Because they're terrified. They're terrified that the defense are going to say, "Oh yeah, what does that actually mean?" So that poor lady had to spend 3-4 hours basically wasting everybody's time. One PowerPoint slide, two PowerPoint slide,
Hmm.
she could have presented all the DNA evidence in one hit, but the damage was the hemotrace.
Yes.
I had a field day.
Explain. Explain to them how that actually messed everything up because they're
Well,
not going not
okay,
everyone's going to understand what they
okay.
actually presented there.
It's very easy. Say you got a red mark or a stain on your shirt, right?
Mhm.
And a forensic scientist goes, I wonder if that's blood. Let me do a presumptive test. So they do a presumptive test. And it's normally a presumptive test. For example, phenolphthalein is a presumptive test for blood. So you do your stain, you do your chemical reaction, you do it on site, and it turns pink. You go, wow, it's a presumptive positive for
Mhm.
blood, but you haven't proven it's blood. You've it may be blood, right? So they said, oh, the white shirt, it's got high velocity blood spatter. It's blood. Beautiful. We're going to the grand jury. We indict him. Blah blah blah. We're going to arrest him, etc. etc. Then they do I think they used LCV, a
Mhm.
stain for
Yes.
blood, right? And that's why it comes up that purple color. Now, what people don't understand is that when you do these sprays, these chemical sprays, you must look at the result within minutes. Do you understand? So, say
Mhm.
you're looking for these spots, you do the
Right.
spray, use either a light or whether it's fluorescent. If you're using luminol, it's luminescent. You have to look at the result quick and say, okay, take a photograph. I've noted this, I've noted
Right.
that, I've noted that. If you leave these chemical stains for hours, the whole shirt turns purple.
Which happened in this case, which is why we don't have that shirt being talked about a lot
And, that,
in
and,
the
that's,
courtroom.
and
Yeah.
that's why the defense is saying, hey, we can't test that shirt anymore.
Mhm.
That's not good. They've ruined it. But in essence, that's what happens when you
Mhm.
use those chemicals, right?
Mhm.
So they had a presumptive test that said it's blood. Then what they did back in the crime lab, they cut the shirt up in all these pieces, looked
Mhm.
at all the spots, and then they did, it's called hemotrace. Hemotrace detects blood. It's a biochemical assay. It's almost like a pregnancy test kit.
Mhm.
So they got all the cuttings of the shirt. They
Mhm.
did an elution. They got a solution. So they eluted all the blood, which they thought was blood, right? They
Mhm.
then put it in the kit, and to their horror, it came up negative. They're
Right.
going, holy shit, this ain't blood. It's not human blood. And the
It's
defense are going, what a bunch of wankers. They
Mhm.
can't even get that right.
Right. And it did. It made them look really, really bad. So the only
Terrible.
blood that they actually did have was the bottom of one shirt, which could be from being at the crime scene at any time after he washed up,
That's it.
because it was on the bottom of the hem. And he did say he went back
Correct.
to the kennels. He's walking
Correct.
around there all over.
Correct.
He had to go down and get Maggie's phone, so probably
Correct.
dipped in it then. And he
Correct.
had to go get Paul's phone because we're pretty sure he touched that too. The first thing
Correct.
he said to the officers was, Paul's phone, like he was there, and it just popped out of his pocket. So I
Correct.
picked it up and put it on his leg
Correct.
because he was
Correct.
worried about touch DNA on the phone.
Correct. So therefore, when the forensic scientists are doing all their analysis, they go, "Oh, yeah. There's blood here. There's DNA there. There's gun smoke, but they're all a family. They're all together." And he said
Mm-hmm.
that he went to the crime scene and he touched his wife. He touched his
Mm-hmm.
son. And there's blood here. There could be transfer, and there's the blood on the steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? There's gun smoke residue.
If anything, it does state to a state of mind that he was so worried that people would think he did it. He didn't touch those bodies because he didn't want blood on him. Because if you did come across those bodies and it was your family and you are checking their pulse and you are such in shock and you're going to go right to him and you're going for the phone and all, you would have stuff all over, unless you're
Correct.
being really, really careful to make sure you
Correct.
don't. So he's actually got two things going on. Like, I got rid of the evidence that says I'm guilty. Now I just got to make sure that they don't really think too hard that it's me. Like,
Correct.
I got to be pristine.
Correct. Now
But
think
he
about
set himself up because he said he's so
yes.
worried about what people think. He said, I touched the bodies.
Correct. But you see, Claire, the bottom line is this: he destroyed his own alibi.
He did. That's what I mean. It's more about what Alex says and
Correct.
what's missing than
And
anything else in this case for me.
and
Yeah.
just so I don't forget, he also talked to the housekeeper. I was here for 40 minutes, wasn't I?
Oh,
I
and
was
the
here for 40.
caretaker too, and the nurse. Yes, he made sure everybody had the right time frame, didn't he?
And then he spoke to his housekeeper um, uh, about the shirt. Remember
Mm-hmm.
about the shirt, the
Mm-hmm.
shoes, the pants. So he's now going. He's backtracking because, oh my God, because she said that when he went to work, remember, she tucked in the shirt for him.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the video that was done at the tree, with the tree bending
Mm-hmm.
over. His clothes are completely different. And what is missing? The blue shirt, the
Mm-hmm.
khaki pants, the loafers. They will be full of blood and brain matter,
And
right?
unable to be cleaned. He couldn't take care of that kind of
No,
evidence. You can't even.
and they've even said, and scientists have actually proven it. You can
Mm-hmm.
put that clothing in a washing machine, launder
Mm-hmm.
it. You're not going to get rid of the evidence. It'll still
Nope.
be there in
They'll
trace
be
amount, but it'll still be there.
they'll still be there enough. And one of the things that they did mark on is the smell of laundry detergent in one of his shirts,
Yeah,
especially the one that had the blood on the bottom hem a little bit. It was
correct.
evident that that was perhaps freshly washed when he put it on. Yeah.
Correct. But
So.
like I said, now with the technique using MVAC, you can now get deep into the grooves of the clothing, of the pants, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and see what DNA is there. But we don't have the important shirt, the important pant. Now let me tell you right now, the
Mm-hmm.
defense might bring up in court. Oh, look what we found. The blue
The,
shirt,
sh- the
the
blue shirt. Yes.
and they're all clean. Oh wow! So
Wait, I'm gonna hope they remember to take the tags off of that freshly purchased shirt that they bring into court to try to say that. I hope they do. But I don't think that that would go well with a jury if you've had this whole investigation and you could have brought that shirt forward to
yeah,
avoid all of this. I hope
yeah.
that that backfires on them if they pull any of
You
that
cannot now.
shenanigans.
That
I
that'll be a Brady violation for a start because the
Yeah,
the state's going. Wait a minute!
you
You're
can't.
bringing in
Right.
evidence without
Mm-hmm.
telling us first.
Yeah. But if I was on the jury, even if they did it at a late, like that
It'll
would
be,
totally, I
laughable.
would be saying, well,
It'll be laughable.
I don't know. Well, I
Yeah.
have a couple of questions here. First of all,
Awesome.
thank you, Jax and Rhonda, for joining the membership. Rhonda joined last night after the stream. I didn't get to shout her out, so thank you. And Jax, thanks
Fantastic.
for being a new member. Well, we got a question here from Aunt Jer, and she wants to know if they will still, what weight they will put on eyewitnesses anymore. Also, what are your thoughts in that Alex Murdaugh's trial attorneys handling the evidence, because we did have John Maters, he's from the prosecution team, manhandling this evidence, like touching it, no gloves, whatever, tossing boxes around. I was catching my breath and screaming like constantly. Like it was so disrespectful to me, but
It was. But you know what, Claire? They would have already done the
yeah.
forensic testing.
Mm-hmm.
They already have done the analysis, right? They would have been very, very cautious because you
Mm-hmm.
can see the uh, the state had only a limited amount of forensic evidence that they could actually test, right? There's no guns. The guns are missing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no clothing. The clothing is missing, and they could only do limited testing. When they looked at the tarp, when they looked at
Mm-hmm.
the raincoat, yeah, there's GSR, but hey, look, they're a gun family. What does the GSR actually mean, right? What they need are the weapons, and what they need is the clothing.
Mm-hmm.
The clothing and the weapons will reveal the crime and who
Mm-hmm.
did it. Now,
Exactly.
Alex is no dummy.
Definitively. Right. Definitively. Yeah.
100% definitively. If you
Mm-hmm.
never clean those guns, his DNA will be on the weapon, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will do DNA analysis. They will confirm that he had handled those two weapons, the shotgun and also the 300 blackout. They will look at the cartridge. So, in other words, they will start mounting up the evidence that makes him look very, very guilty. But
Mm-hmm.
the critical thing is the clothing. The
Yes.
clothing will represent what happened at the crime scene, right? The
Mm-hmm.
blood spatter, the brain matter, the fluid, that will
Mm-hmm.
be that will be diagnostic of what happened at the crime scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alex removed the weapons, disposed of them, and he cleaned himself down
Mm-hmm.
and he got rid of the clothing because he knew that if they find any of those articles of clothing, he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the amazing thing is, look at this, guys. The amazing thing is, we've got that Snapchat video right early on when he's
Mm-hmm.
at the tree. We can see the clothing.
We can.
Then we've got the images of him in the police vehicle in a totally different outfit, and
Mm-hmm.
we've got the Snapchat video or the video of Paul, Maggie, and Alex all at the kennel. And guess what? That's the
Mm.
location of the crime scene.
Yes,
That's where two
and
people were.
there's nobody else there. That's
Nobody,
paramount. Nobody else there. No
nobody.
evidence. And here's the thing: not
Yeah,
only is there not evidence that actually definitive DNA that Alex did it, there's absolutely not a scrap of DNA that anybody else did it either.
good point. That's a very, very good point.
And
So,
this is
you know,
what I look at. What is missing? No one else would be that particular to clear it all up. Nobody else had the
always
opportunity being there within seven
no.
minutes. Dogs
And
would have been barking. There would have
correct,
been defensive moons. Something else would
correct.
be on that video besides Bubba's got a chicken. There would be, what the hell are you doing here? And why are you pointing that gun at me? Like, or something like that.
And like I said, Claire,
Yeah.
his son has spoken from the grave.
He has. He has. He's been
His
the little
son,
detective all the way through. He
I
absolutely
called him
has.
the little detective. God bless him. I
Mm-hmm.
knew he did a very, very bad thing when he was
Mm-hmm.
on the boat. He should have just admitted
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
said
He listen,
sorry.
in a way, the pressure, listening to his father, I can understand. I can understand. But I also could see the pressure from his mom and everybody after a couple of years of this and the family and how they're being treated.
Enough is enough.
Oh, enough is enough and wanting to do the right thing. And I think that's really what was coming to a head. I could actually picture that based on
Correct,
some of the statements that I have seen.
correct. I
And
think
actually, the way the Beach
oh,
family is dealing with them all too, they must have had correspondence with them back and forth and knew where they were headed because they actually released them from everything, including Buster. They knew who the problem was with the obstruction of justice, where the advice was coming
100%,
from. Remember, he
100%.
was a young man and he was drunk, and these things happen. He did not intend for anyone to die. It's manslaughter
No,
at the best. He did
no,
not intend anyone to get
correct.
hurt.
But
And
that's a problem, Claire.
mhm.
That's the problem. Corruption.
Corruption, the obstruction. This
Corruption.
family's history goes all the way back to the original great grandfather with this insurance fraud and instruct. I mean, the if you go back into the details, which I'm sure for another country you may not have all of it, but it is
No,
unbelievable the stuff you can come up with on this family. It is like
Correct.
you're like it's like status quo. I'm surprised they didn't have them all in there, as to the this is just what they do. like,
Correct. Well, you see, the case that I study a lot of, the Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey cases, you still got the overarching problem of the
Mhm,
sheriff, the
mhm,
ex-sheriff, Sarek, the DA, Dennis Vogel. It's the same type of garbage, but completely opposite. You
mhm,
see, Stephen Avery was going to gather, he was going to become a millionaire, right?
mhm, mhm.
Whereas Alex stole millions of dollars and
Right.
owed a lot of money to a
Mhm.
lot of people.
Yep.
See the difference? But it's the same level of corruption. The
Mhm.
cases are different, yet they run in parallel. Very
Oh.
so at the
Mhm.
heart is powerful individuals with a lot of power and clout and the ability to use it. That's exactly what his defense attorneys are like. They're old
Mhm.
school. They're old
Mhm.
school. They don't care whether he did it or not. They're there for the sport.
Mhm.
We defended him. We won. Thank you.
You could see because it's a tough case, and if they do win it, that's a
Oh,
Hail
massive.
Mary because popular
Yeah,
opinion is not is that he did it.
correct.
Just is there enough evidence to prove it? Can the jury get there? I mean, every poll I've seen has Alex Murdaugh guilty, but can the jury go with it? I- I- I-
Correct. And
I have not seen anybody see it's impossible for him to do it. It's just no way. Not one single poll came through that way. I've heard people say it, but
no,
not
no.
be able to
The-
back it up. Like they talk about the time frame, it being too short a time. Well,
no,
Sled just did an excellent job of laying
no,
out that time frame and nailed him even to the point where Maggie's phone was thrown. All of that about he couldn't have got rid of the phone and went back, that's impossible. Well, you can at 85 miles an hour, and they just proved it.
correct,
And they proved his car did it, that his
correct,
vehicle actually did the 85 miles an hour necessary to do that and go in the opposite direction and swing back and go
correct,
back. They
correct.
nailed that part. I got two questions from the chat, and then I got one big question for you about one of the, want some testimony. From T1, their question is
You
Alex
won.
had plenty of motive. Do you think so? Motive. Do you think it's there?
Uh, Only Alex can understand what his motive was,
Mm-hmm.
right? Only he. You can't get into somebody else's mind. That's why in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of trials they don't really try to prove the motive. But think about this, and I thought about this for a long period of time. What started Alex Murdaugh's downfall? Think about it. What was the precipitating factor in his downfall? What shone the spotlight directly on him? And the answer is the boat incident that his
It
son
coming to a head.
did.
Yep. That in the
His son,
partnership now investigating missing money. Yep.
yep,
Mhm.
that his son
Mhm.
did. So in a way, this is almost a psychological punishment for his son. By
Mhm.
you doing this, you've exposed me because Paul was going to be in big trouble. Alex was going to be in trouble. Buster was going to be in trouble. A lot of people were going to be in big trouble. What happened after the murders? Everything went silent.
Mhm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I wrote it down. But wasn't there going to be a hearing in 3 days' time on the
Mark
10th?
Tinsley, it was on Discovery. It was on Financial Discovery. All of the hidden accounts were going to come out in Maggie's
On the
name and his
10th.
name on the 10th, 3 days. Because
Okay.
that's the other catalyst. That and in the partnership
Yeah.
meeting where Jenny Seckinger confronted him that I've got
Yes.
to cancel checks. We need to know what's going on here.
Yes.
We know what's up. You need to like come clean. Like it was a tense conversation.
Okay.
And he talked with Chris, his best
Yeah.
friend, and he was also like, the gig is up.
Yeah.
Like,
And
what's going on?
this will blow your
Mhm.
mind. On the day that Stephen Avery got arrested, the next day Tom Kasarik was meant to take the deposition in the stand
Oh, yes. Okay, so
after he
then
got, after he
mhm,
got arrested. The
nothing.
deposition
Just
stopped.
right.
So here's the point. Here's the point. I know this sounds bizarre, but Paul never got to spend any time in jail.
Mm-mm.
He didn't get sued. Alex hasn't been sued yet. So
Mhm.
everything has come to a standstill.
And he said
And
he wanted to clear Paul's name. He said
yes,
that repeatedly. Mhm.
yes. and something snapped. If Alex committed this
Mm-hmm.
double homicide, something snapped. He was in the pressure cooker, and he saw an opportunity. His son
Mm-hmm.
was here, his wife was there. They were
Mm-hmm.
separated.
Right.
He had no idea about the
Mm-hmm.
video that his son took at the
Mm-hmm.
kennels. Because what did he say in the interview? I wasn't there. I was napping.
True. Now, the other part of that question was about eyewitnesses. Do you think that these days I don't see them being used as often? Maybe because they don't exist or not, or maybe the amount of overturns I've seen about retractions of statements and things that were said to be seen that weren't seen. Because you got somebody's statement. It's all he said, she said when you have an eyewitness, correct?
It's
Um,
simple. It's simple, Claire. If you
mhm.
can't corroborate it, it's worthless.
Right. So
You must
that's what I was.
corroborate
Yeah,
it.
that's what I thought you were going to say for
Yeah,
Aunt Chair. They will use eyewitness accounts when they are when there's more than one, absolutely, like a crowd and everybody's stories are matching up from
exactly.
different angles, or when it can be collaborated by other things that without a doubt,
Correct.
some
Correct.
video, a phone call, anything else
Correct.
that proves
Claire,
what the
what did they say?
witness is
What did they
saying.
say in court?
You
What did they
said
say in court?
collaborating. Yeah.
Corroborate. What did they say?
Corroborating, right.
They
Hmm.
said, "How do you know he had
Hmm.
stolen all this money?" Here's the check.
Here's the check, right? It's cashed. He signed the
Okay,
back of it, right? He signed the back
done.
of it.
That's how
It
you
went. Yeah.
corroborate an
He
eyewitness.
created the account that it went into under a false name, by the way, for a company that he works with that
Correct.
knows nothing about it.
Correct.
You know, you know,
Correct.
to that point, if they had only used four witnesses, that would have went over better with the jury. In my opinion, if they used the Satterfield boy, Mark
Yes.
Tinsley,
Yes.
Jenny Seckinger,
Yes.
okay, and the best friend, Chris, who he stabbed in the
Yes.
back over the whole
Yes.
deal. Forget
That's
about
enough.
Forge and Palmetto and all those other bands.
That's enough.
Those
That's
four
enough.
did him in, and that would have took 2
Yep.
days. And then the
Yep.
jury might remember actually what happened. you
Well,
know.
this is why, Claire, I'll tell you
Mhm.
right now, to people on foul play, we talk about this all the time, right? The closing statement
I can't wait. Do you know the
going to
only thing
be
I clipped was
the
the opening statements? I keep referring everybody. If you want to know
yes,
what the prosecution is trying to prove with all of this, listen
but
to the opening statement over and over again. Listen to what he says, and go see if he did it. Like go see if we
you
actually see it.
you know what made me laugh, right? Now,
Yeah.
in the foul play team, right, we read the entire trial transcript.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen Avery and Brett, we read it all. We
Mm-hmm.
actually memorized it or memorialized it. We actually did podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
We did the whole lot. Mr. Kratz's opening statement went on for hours. Hell, in this case, the state comes in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. I'm there. You got to be kidding.
Oh, and he
And
had
then,
a break in between there.
yeah,
He took a
and then
break and then came back. Yes.
then Harpoonian comes along and says, everything he said, it's all rubbish, and we'll prove it. I'm there.
I'm waiting.
That's it.
I'm
That's
waiting to
it.
see. It's going to take a lot for me, but I'm really going to try to listen to every single word and try to figure out what they
Correct.
are showing that's missing and how it could be somebody else. I really want to hear that. I don't want them to go away unjustified. I have my
Correct.
opinions right now based on what I've seen and other things that I've heard, but I'm not allowed to. I'm not on the jury. I'm not allowed to consider any of
Correct.
that.
Correct.
So
And
I'm
it's
just looking at the
speculating.
jury trial. I want to listen to what they actually present instead of
Correct.
this game they've been playing during prosecution with the objections and all. That's all like gamey stuff. They haven't really given me anything except for the other opinion from the forensic
Yeah.
pathologist from Dr. Reamer. What I wanted to ask you, and I've
Brilliant.
been dying,
She was brilliant.
2 questions. The first one is, do you think Alex Murdaugh will take the stand? And that's from Jax, and I've been thinking the same thing. Do you think that he will, being as much as he thinks he has control of this situation? Do you think he's going to take the stand?
No,
No,
no.
I don't think in a murder case that would be smart.
He's a narcissist. He's a narcissist. But if he takes the stand, they'll destroy him.
They will,
They'll destroy
because
him because
every lie will come up, won't it? Every lie.
they will put a shopping list
Hmm.
and say, how do you explain this, this, and this? How do you explain your actions? How can it be that your wife's phone just happens to be on the roadside in the same direction you were traveling? And oh my God, didn't you puncture your own tire and throw out the knife and did the same thing? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
once you start piling all that up, Alex has got nowhere to go. And
Mm-hmm.
could you imagine his defense attorneys? They'll be going, "Holy shit, where's the exit door? We got to
Mm-hmm.
run. We're not
Mm-hmm.
going to make. We're not going to make."
Wow.
Alex, he'll keep his mouth shut.
He should. He should. Although it does look like he's directing them a lot. The amount of files that he walks in and out of that courtroom with is like he's definitely directing a lot here. He's helping as much as he can with this case.
But
Absolutely.
notice, he never throws his hands in the air. I'm innocent. There are killers out there. What the hell are you doing?
He never once, not even while the investigation was going on, because the sister's testimony spoke loudly to that. That's what turned her. He never
Yeah,
once thought of that. It was all about the case this. It's all about, like, the Mallory Beach case this, that, this, not about finding the killers. You know why? Because he knows if he's not it, he knows who did it. If
correct,
he's not the one who did it, he knows
correct.
exactly who did.
Either he did it or he's an accessory, right? Same,
Exactly.
same
He's
punishment. Same punishment.
Mm-hmm. Is that's it. He knows who did it and
But,
he's not saying. Yeah.
but let's think about it, right? Those SLED agents that came in, they were different, apparently different
Mm-hmm.
from law enforcement officers. They're not stupid. They're going to look,
No.
what are the entering points? What are the exit points? Who could
Mm-hmm.
have come in? Who could have gone out? Bloody harpooned and saying, "Oh, they were shooting from the trees. They were shooting from the trees." No, the shooters were 3 feet between Paul and Maggie. That's how close they
Mm-hmm.
were, right?
This
This
this was
this was
this,
deeply personal.
definitely. I mean,
This was personal.
in the back of the headshots, those angle, they proved it couldn't be from the trees when it comes up
No,
from
or
under the chin
suicide,
to
or
hitting the shoulder that way. There's no way. But
no,
that brings me to the point I wanted to ask you about Kinsey's testimony. When it comes to, we both agree that Dr. Reamer actually, for the first time, could explain to the jury exactly what they think happened as far as how they died. What could have possibly, as far as angles, positions, where, what happened, how many shots, what those shots did,
correct,
how close the person had to be, how
correct.
many, oh, she did a great job. And then Dr. and then
Fantastic job.
Kinsey comes in and adds the rest of it. And he's the educator of this kind of stuff in the area. And I was waiting for his testimony the whole time because I was like, maybe finally we'll get the picture of how the state actually thinks Alex did it. Just like you presented that he was standing there and, he got the first shot in. That is pretty much what Kinsey was portraying about the dummy there. That's why we see the pictures of the dummy standing in the blood spots to show the angle that Paul was standing at. He had his back to the perpetrator, then turned to the perpetrator before he was shot, right? And
Correct.
then walked towards the perpetrator to the exit of the thing when he got the second shot,
Shocking,
right?
shocking. The
Mm-hmm.
the the thing is, right? These guys are gurus at crime scene reconstruction. The
Mm-hmm.
pathologist. Now, notice what the pathologist said. I didn't look at crime scene photos. You know
Mm-mm.
why? She didn't want to. She didn't want her mind to be contaminated with what was around the victim.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to establish in shot, out shot, where what anatomical structures were damaged, what type of wound, was there gunpowder residue, was there stippling, what was the position of the head, what was the position of the body, what was the position of the angles. And then you add the elements of the crime scene, you
Which
go,
is what Kinsey did. He took what she said for the jury and said, and the crime scene matches it. Look where the blood is. Look where the splatter is. Look at this.
done,
She's
done,
telling you the body says this, and
correct?
the crime
Look,
scene matches it.
the anatomy of the crime is on the victim's
Mhm.
bodies.
To me, that is the solidest piece of evidence, the solidest thing that I think is going to come across the jury. That and the final piece by Rudofsky with that timeline
Oh,
that takes all that goobly goop technology that went on for like a whole week and puts it in a spreadsheet that they're going to go, can we see that document, please? Because we're just going to read that.
that's what I want.
That's it.
I've gone
Yeah.
through it. I've written my own timelines and things down, like
Mm-hmm.
many people have. But what is remarkable is that, for one, this is spying on you.
I know. Like,
This this is your spy. This
What
is
have
your
we
spot.
learned? We're
And
never
your
alone, people. We're never
and your
alone.
I
Yeah.
bet you everyone in the audience is going, "Oh, I'm turning off my mobile phone. I'm putting it into airplane
Well, I
mode."
have location off. Like I learned that. Like somebody told me the
Yeah,
10 things to turn off on your iPhone
well,
the day you get it. Like I did that.
you'd be
Yeah.
surprised.
Mhm.
You're tracked everywhere. And
Mhm.
what's incredible is that with the GPS and also the cell tower pings, they can
Mhm.
determine direction and where you're traveling because it pings off the different cell towers.
Mhm.
They could tell when Maggie was going to Mozille. They could tell when Paul was going to Mozille because they can track the cell tower pings. Back in the case that I've studied and my team on foul play, they didn't have all this incredible amount
Right.
of information. We could have solved the case years ago.
Yeah, it would have been
Here,
so simple, right? Because you would have
yeah,
had all of that extra stuff that just proves that your scenario is
yep,
more plausible because here are the points.
exactly.
Here, yeah.
They could even tell that when he rolled up to a meter, he didn't stop in the driveway. He went further than the
That was a
driveway.
big one too, because he says he didn't go to the kennels, but he went right up to her body,
I 100%,
right up to where they
100%.
were.
So when you overlay everything together, and this is the powerful nature of forensic evidence and also electronic evidence,
Mhm.
when it all matches together, then you know exactly where he was at a precise time point. Alex cannot dispute it because
Mhm.
the information is coming from multiple sources, independent sources.
Mhm.
So he stuffed. He said, I wasn't at the kennels. And what did Griffin say? The state has proven that my client was at the kennel.
Mhm.
He said it.
He
He
said
said it
it.
in court. He said it in
I
court.
I think that he's actually they are laying on the ground. They definitely going to have some kind of appeal here because I cannot believe some of the things that comes out of his mouth. When
Correct.
Harpoolian said, "Yeah, my client's a liar," he told the jury like to their face, "My client's a liar. So what?" And he was at the kennels. So what? And people were
And
dead within 9 minutes. So what?
that's right. And not only that, it's his behavior with the cell phone, how he turned it off over a certain
True,
period of
because there's testimony from everybody who knew him, partners, family, Paul's friends, okay, and even housekeepers and caretakers that he was always on his phone. He always has his phone. It
all
was
the
never
time.
away. And yet his alibi is I turned my phone off and left it on the kitchen table while I
And
took a
went to
nap for
sleep.
an hour,
And went to sleep. Correct. Correct.
which never happens.
And that's
Which the
caught on tape.
housekeeper said that would be unprecedented for him. That
Correct.
would
And
be like that.
that's caught on tape. He
Mhm,
confessed, yeah. I wasn't at the kennels. I was asleep. No, you weren't. And the tracking tracked him there, right?
mhm.
So he was there. He definitely was there. He was caught on tape. He didn't realize he was being taped.
He
Within
said
a
he didn't
few
see them until he had dinner with them and never saw them again until he saw the bodies. That's exactly what he said.
and within a few
Twice
short
in both
minutes,
interviews. In both interviews. He
within a
kept
few short
saying
minutes,
that until they showed him the video of the kennel. Then he
yep,
stopped talking.
he said, "That's not me. That's not me."
Mhm.
Because he knows he got trapped. He got entrapped. He had
I
nowhere to
think
go.
the state did a very good they knew he was going to say it wasn't him because there's no actual picture of him. It's just his voice. They made
Correct,
sure every witness that hit that stand identified that video voice.
100%. And that's why the state put on a piecemeal approach. Instead
Mhm.
of coming out with it straight away, they went a little bit, a little bit, little bit. I hope the jury remembers all of it because the closing statements are going to be crucial in nailing Alex
Mhm.
for double homicide.
Well, the key in the closing statements, if you'll agree, it's all is they are allowed to then do argumentative and speculation, and they're allowed to like pull it all together for you and paint the picture
Correct.
and actually point the jury where they want them to look. So that will
Correct.
be the final case where they'll be able to ask for that evidence because they're not allowed to use anything that comes up in the arguments at all. That whatever attorney
Correct.
said, only the
Correct. Not
evidence that's
correct.
actually presented and the testimony that's
In
actually
trial.
stated.
Yep.
That is all that they will have for deliberation. It's not
100%
anything
correct.
anybody says. So when they
Correct.
paint that picture, their job is to point them to put in their heads the things they want to ask for to look at, the main points that hammer it home. And that would
Correct.
be that video. That
So
would be the
the
forensic on how it happened, right?
correct. So the question must be asked, A lot of people have done timelines to the second.
Mm-hmm.
Question is, was he there? Yes. Did he have access to weapons and ammunition? Yes. Was he at the crime scene? Yes. Did he have control of the crime scene after they were dead? Yes. Did
Yes,
he try and establish an alibi? Yes.
he did.
He's ticked all the boxes, every
Mm-hmm.
one of them.
Wouldn't it be easy if that's what the jury had, like just a little box like that they could just like do that? But
And that's the way
um,
they should. That's the way.
yeah.
Hopefully, they
But
should
that's
do
why
it.
you and I will never be able to sit on a jury. They would ask
No,
us like 5 questions. They go, "Get out of here! Get
they'll
out!
throw us out.
Get out!
Anything about DNA? Yep, out.
Yep, out! Out!
Clear, out.
Out! There you go. You think too much about these stuff. Get out of here!" Like they want the
Correct.
average person, and that's what I worry about with the terminology. That Harpoolian's been very good at taking terms and turning them to mean something else, or acting dumb like he doesn't know what it means to get you all
Yeah,
confused about what it actually means.
that's and
And
the
that's
way he
playing for the jury to say it's okay for you not to understand because that's not important. You don't have to understand that.
don't look here,
Don't look
look there.
here, look over there. Right.
Correct,
Exactly. Yeah,
correct.
he's good at
So
that. He's
obvious
very good. He's a
yeah,
sneaky
he
snake. He's
he's
sneaky.
very, very sneaky, but I'm
Hmm.
looking forward now to the what the, defense brings up, because if
Oh.
they bring up people like the, coroner,
Hmm.
what is that? The case is over. The case is you might as well shut it off
Hmm.
right now.
Hmm.
It's not good.
There was a comment before we get ready for finals. Oh, there was a comment from Always Create for one of my mods, and she's tracked this case with me for quite some time, and we talk about it regularly. And she
Awesome.
said one of the things that actually sticks out to her the most is that when Alex is asked about this, he said it's obvious that whoever did this thought about it for a long time.
Yes. Yes, and that's scary. That's an embedded confession right there.
Now he wasn't looking for the murderers, as the sister
No.
update. He wasn't looking for the murderers, but he knows that murderer was thinking about it for a long time.
Correct. Correct. This was a long time in the planning. The
Hmm.
opportunity was, if you notice, Alex, this happened at Moselle.
Hmm.
That this is a place where Maggie doesn't live, right?
Right.
So Alex was in total control. Alex could have put weapons wherever he wanted around that property. No one would have said a word. Oh, you got a
Hmm.
weapon in your car? Nah,
Exactly.
there are
Yeah.
shells here. Remember when they went through the rubbish in the
Mhm.
garage? They pulled out boxes of shotgun shells.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's no big deal.
Mhm.
There's nothing suspicious.
That's why the actual bullets that are loaded having Maggie's touch DNA on that speak loudly to me because that means gloves. Somebody prepared to load their gun. Somebody prepared in
Correct.
advance. And as
Correct.
far as Paul's gun, of course his was in there. That was his gun. He loads it regularly. Okay.
And what and have a look what Alex did. Right, he
Mhm.
went back to his house, got a shotgun,
Mhm.
and you can actually see it in the video of his shotgun next to the car. Now you think about this. You've got crime scene detectives coming along and they're going, "There's a gun right there. There are two dead victims
Mhm.
here. What the hell?" And he had a towel. They proved it. He had a towel in his car as well. I wonder why.
Because he took all the fingerprints off of the gun. The gun. Right.
Correct. So
Mhm.
they couldn't rule. I think it was the Bernelli. They couldn't
Right.
rule it in or they couldn't rule it out. It just wipe it down. That's it.
Mm.
If they go
Well,
hunting,
and
they
he
go
told them about that's what really got me is that they're there already walking around and he has to tell them that there's a gunshot laying against that truck already. There's already like 10 people walking around.
correct.
And he had to come out and tell them like this just showed me that this was very upsetting. They didn't know what they were dealing with. They knew that SLED was going to take over. So you got you got the first responders. They're not really willing to document as the way they would. They don't want to mess anything up for
No.
SLED. They know SLED's coming, so they know they're the experts. And yet they did make some good mental notes. It's raining.
Oh yeah.
Footprints are disappearing. So are tire treads. Let me just make a mental note of what I see.
Yes.
Take whatever pictures I can, knowing
Yes.
that SLED will come later and do better. But let me document what I think is possibly disappearing with all these people walking around.
And that's the importance of the body cam, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the importance of preservation of a crime scene and documentation of a crime
Mm-hmm.
scene. Because
Mm-hmm. And
if
he did a good job of who put the dogs in the kennel, what dogs went into what kennel, what might have been nervous, because that all came up to play when we had the grounds guy there that does the kennel work with him,
That's
who's
correct.
not really a grounds guy. He's just the kennel guy,
Correct.
apparently, just a
And he's
neighbor that does
feeding the
kennels that
cleaning,
Alex
feeding the
hired.
cleaning and the
Right.
hose.
But he had a particular routine and he knows how he
He
hangs that
knew
hose and he knows somebody else hung the
someone did.
hose. Right.
Someone did, correct. And it
Mhm.
wasn't neat and tidy because the guy's got OCD.
Mhm.
He wants the hose. So, just to summarize, the it's a simple case, but because of the nature of the case, that they're related, they're family, it's complicated. Because when you look at the forensic evidence, the articles of clothing and the guns, no one knows where they are. So
Mhm.
put it this way, you've got fantastic information here, but you're missing the middle bit.
Mhm.
The jury have got to make that mental leap. Yeah, of course. The reason why is because he hit the bloody thing, right? So
But they've
that,
got to get there. They've got to get, if the
correct,
prosecution doesn't actually say, why would all that be missing? I'm not sure they'll get there. Like if I was on the jury, I would need to hear permission to go there. Does that make sense? This is a
it
legal
does,
system. You're taking your job really serious. You're on the jury. The
correct,
judge tells you can only look at the evidence and all of its
correct,
evidence.
correct,
I need the prosecution to tell me it's okay to fill in a blank when that blank might be obviously caused by the perpetrator. I need
correct.
to hear that as a jury member,
No, not
or
yet.
I'm
Yeah,
not going to go there.
that's correct. That's correct. But the thing is, they've already put the evidence up there. Hey,
Mm,
at this time, look what he was wearing.
they
At
did, but
this time,
they're asking
it
them to
didn't
make
just,
a big deal about it,
it
right?
didn't just,
Yeah. So
it
it'll
didn't,
be really important if the defense actually diffuses that by explaining that away. How they can, I don't know. Paul's videos
correct.
have done Alex in, almost as bad
I
as
have,
his statement that there's a lot of speculation about the one recording on whether he did him so wrong or they did him so wrong. That's been analyzed over and over again. He could have just misspoke. It
don't
does
wait.
sound like
Oh,
but
yeah,
it could
don't
just be I did him so wrong because of the advice I gave him in the Mallory Beach thing, and that's why he got
correct.
shot because these people are mad at him or something.
No,
It could really mean anything.
that's
But
correct.
he did say it,
Yeah,
but it wasn't
he
good.
did, he
But
did. But you need convincing, hardcore
mhm,
evidence
mhm,
that the jury will look at this and go, hmm. If you weigh up all the facts, did he do it?
mhm,
I have some doubt. There'll
right.
be jurors that will have some doubt. I'm telling you right now
Right.
because
Do
they're
you
used to
think they'll
it.
believe
It's like that.
pathologists though? Do you think they'll believe the science even if they don't understand it? If
Science is what?
Dr. Reamer comes out and says it's like this, I think she was quite personable and
Yeah,
talked in layman terms. I think they'll believe her. I think they'll believe everything she said,
the
especially
science is
how
what
she
science.
countered Harpoolian when he
Yeah,
said every
she was,
time he said it was some way else, she said no, and here's why I don't think you're correct
yeah.
on that.
And
She
how
gave them what they
but
needed. Yeah.
Claire, how embarrassing. How
Mm.
do you know? How do you know the bullet went from here to there? How do you know it didn't come from here to there? And you should have seen the look on her face. Going, she in her head, she must be thinking, "You're an absolute dickhead. You're trying to question me, a forensic pathologist that have done how many
Mhm.
autopsies and gunshot wounds? You're trying to tell me that the direction of the shot was different. How did he do? He held his gun on top of his head. How was he going to pull the trigger?
I think
Right?
that backfired for him a little bit because
Badly,
she was able
badly.
to prove why she thought that
Correct.
repeatedly. No matter
Because
what he threw at her,
or the
she could.
ejector was above,
Yeah.
or the ejector
Mhm.
was above. So what had
Mhm.
happened was the gas, the blast, the kinetic
Mhm.
energy blew the brain out of the cranial vault. Boom! All out. The back of
Mhm.
his head, all gone. That's how lethal it was. And she said he fell immediately down, got
Mhm.
scratches on his face. She worked out the entire sequence of events.
Mhm.
Incredible. She did the same thing for Maggie, worked out the stippling, the wounds, which ones were non fatal, which ones were fatal. Oh my God. And she even said the gunman went right behind her and put one at the back of her head, coup de grace, to
Right.
make sure that he blew her brains out. What the hell?
Because they didn't want her alive. She was obviously she said
No,
she was suffering,
no
she was in
witness.
pain. She would have been She could have been speaking, yelling. She could have been laying on the ground, writhing in pain at that point. And he
correct,
definitely needed her to be done.
correct.
Whoever needed her
And
done. Yeah.
imagine if she was able to dial 911,
Mm-hmm. He
right?
didn't want her because at that point she still had her phone. Yeah. Mm.
Correct. And that's why you
And
got to,
one
in my,
thing I think Paul did is that the way his phone locks and he was so low on battery, that kind of saved the case because nobody could get into that phone to alter a
correct.
damn thing. That thing was pristine when the FBI
And that,
got it, and
and that
everything is uncontestable that came out of it.
correct. And that's why Apple got into a lot of trouble by the FBI, because the FBI said, give me the code to crack into this phone. Nope. Our
Mm-mm.
privacy laws do not allow it. And now, if you have a look at Apple's new terms,
Mm-hmm.
they've got encryption, and you
Yes.
have the key. If you
Mm-hmm.
lose the key, Apple can't get access to your data. That's
Mm-mm.
how serious they are about data
That's it.
protection.
And they wanted to get themselves out of the loop for it, to tell you the truth.
Correct,
They don't want to be responsible anymore for the
correct,
violation of privacy and all these lawsuits
correct.
because it's serious. It's when you buy an Apple product, it's one of the things you're buying is that
You're
security.
buying the privacy and the
Hmm.
security. But you see, imagine now if they both had the new iPhones with crash detection, because if the phone is violently shook in some type of traumatic event, the phone automatically calls 911. Did you know
You
that?
mean when you mean crash, you mean it could have shook violently enough from the shot that 911 would have been called during the crime?
Yep. A lot of people with the new iPhones, I've got one, they've gone on amusement park rides or skiing, and they've accidentally triggered the 911.
911? Wow.
Yep,
Mm,
correct. So you can
wow.
imagine if there was a
Wow.
violent altercation, a movement, sudden movement of the phone, and the phone detected, and the phone says, "We've detected that you're in a crash. We're going to ring nine." Imagine that. Oh my God. That's the new iPhones have got it. So,
Wow.
again, this case goes to show the remarkable nature of technology in
Exactly.
solving a crime. And I
Wow.
believe his son spoke from the grave and nabbed his dad
He did.
twice.
He did. And that
Truly,
and coming from a scientist, they would really rather see the other kind of evidence, I'm sure, because that would
I
give
would
you
have loved to have seen.
much more to relate to and to
Yeah,
be able to talk about. But that just shows the strength of that data that came through
correct.
in that
And
part of the case.
it also proves clear that there's only a limitation of how much you can use forensic evidence, right?
True.
Because if
Hmm.
someone tries to cover up their crimes, the evidence is lacking. But you
Hmm.
have to think, what is reasonable here? What is reasonable, right? And the thing is, the classic forensic evidence would have been the weapons would have been left behind, or there was evidence of blood spatter, high velocity blood spatter on a shirt, pants, clothing to
Hmm.
say, what's your son's brains doing on your shirt? It meant that
Exactly.
you were right next to the shotgun. Right, Mr. Alex Murdaugh. You
Right.
know what I
Like
mean?
if you didn't do it, who did it? Like you need to name somebody, dude, or this is you.
This
Exactly.
is you.
Yeah. You know what? On that, once they bring the other experts on the defense, which is going to be all next week,
I'm going to listen to
I
I'll listen to
would
him.
you consider where the jury is out for deliberation, coming back and speaking on the evidence that the defense puts forward from their forensic experts? I would
If you want me back,
I
if I
I'm
haven't bored
sure if I don't have you back, there'll be a mutiny in my chat. My mods will all quit, and everybody that subscribes to my channel will give up because, of course, I would want you back. This kind of conversation is what we thrive on here.
I love
Absolutely.
it. It was really, really entertaining, and it was casual. It was
It,
fun, and it was fantastic. And that's the way you can't be too super serious, if you know what I
yeah,
mean.
it
And
is.
great questions from chat too, which is
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
I love how they participate. And when we're doing the trials, we try to let the information speak for itself. And we only talk during the breaks, in the lunches. And we banter back and forth. We sometimes we even talk about food instead, just to lighten the mood, especially if
Nothing
we're
wrong with
talking
that.
blood and guts
Correct.
and stuff in between. And we let everybody come up with theories. We let people come up and talk about it. We want it casual. It's a hobby. Like I'm not
Well,
trying to be a legalese or like a
no,
forensic scientist.
no,
It's a hobby. Yeah.
no, correct. So taken down a ton of notes. It'd be interesting now to compare my notes with what the defense brings up. So
I
far,
did, and
they're
that's what I want you to do when you come back.
they're
Definitely, we're
trying to
gonna
make
put
me
them.
laugh so much.
Yeah. We should have a good time then. We'll do that when they're in deliberations. We'll try to get a time together to try to do it before
That'd
they
be awesome.
decide. Yeah. Oh, I would love that. If there's not anything, I'm just gonna check the chat really quick to see if they have anything else for you. Um, there's a lot of praise for you in here. Uh,
Thank you so
thank you
much.
for feeding the science and true crime need in me. Thank you, Dr. Silkman, for that
Well,
from my mods.
I tell you what,
Yeah.
we only really
Mm-hmm.
touched on the forensic evidence, and we didn't go hardcore. So,
Yes, it's that because it is because I know how you are. You're a scientist. You don't have it in front of you. There's only so far you'll go, correct? Like you're only gonna go so far without a disclaimer about speculation and this and that.
I
Because
tell you,
is it
I
not
speculate.
true that every piece of DNA evidence, right? It has its definitives, but each expert can look at it a different way and put a different
That
actual analysis on it.
DNA doesn't tell a story. People do.
Period.
Right?
Thank you.
People
Thank you
do.
for that. That is probably the takeaway from this whole conversation. Like, it is because it's all about everything else and putting it all together, getting the story together with all the little pieces that we
Correct.
that
And
that we
and
got.
and crime scenes, Claire, are complex.
Mhm.
Sometimes they can be very complex. Other times they're clear case. And in this situation, it is complex because they're
Mhm.
family, and there is forensic evidence that is missing, and that's what makes it really difficult. Hey, some people want me back. That must be
They
crazy.
do. They do. Except for your friend T1. He said, you were mad. But I know he's your good friend because he's been chatting you up in there. I know he's
Me
kidding
and
for
me and
sure.
T1 always talk all the
Yeah,
time.
that's like Jack's telling me that none of us are like obsessed with any of these,
No,
right?
none of
Like, no, not at all. No,
no.
not at all. There's just a whole bunch of us that do it
But
every
Claire,
day.
it's so great to break out and
Hmm.
to talk to different people, get
Hmm.
their perspective, and get their viewpoints. And at the end of the day, all of us want to know the truth.
Hmm.
The truth. What actually happened for the victims to find out. Look,
Hmm.
if the person is guilty, so be it. The criminal justice system will look after that. But if they're innocent, there's always the presumption of innocence, right?
Exactly.
To me,
Exactly.
the
Hmm.
dark clouds are over Alex Murdaugh at this stage.
They are. I have one more question from a mod that I promised I would
Cer-
ask.
Certainly.
Being where your expertise is, where your education is, where your studies are, what weight would you have as a witness in this trial or any trial?
You
Yeah.
mean with my educational background?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you
Uh,
think that they would? Do you
I
think
would,
the jury actually looks at that? Like,
I think I would scare a lot of people.
mm-hmm. Do you
If I
think they
was,
would listen though?
I think they would. You've got to basically, with this type of material, you've got to be able to take complex concepts and make them simple to understand,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the important thing. In a lot of these trials, when they're talking about loci, alleles, frequencies, DNA forensics, um, all these different type of tests, most people are going,
Mm-hmm.
what the hell are you talking about? Just give me a little summary. But once you understand the basics,
Mm-hmm.
especially of crime scene analysis, you can go to any case and understand what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think me on the jury, depending on what the evidence was, I could be fairly convincing to others if I felt he either was inculpatory or exculpatory or plain pure bullshit. Because
Exactly.
that,
And just exactly explaining to them that it could be all three, like at any time,
correct,
would be helpful. So you'd be deadly
correct.
as a foreman on a jury for
I
sure.
would,
And you would absolutely be killer as a witness. I think that MC record that answers your question. Like he's got it. He got it like that. Okay. And here in New Jersey, we would say you're all that and a bag of chips and the pickle on the side. Absolutely. This has been a joy for me. I hope you'll come back. I hope that we can do more together with other cases. This has been a thrill working with your group. I
My
do come and watch your guys' show. I stopped actually doing the Stephen Avery. You guys do such a great job that I
thank
told everybody that wanted to know anything about it to go over and do and watch it the way you guys do it, because you had it, just hands down the best I'd ever seen as far as covering it from A to Z. Nobody could touch it
we
as well as
we
you did.
the amazing thing is we cover a lot of different cases as well.
Hmm.
And we also cover a lot of different topics. And I did one recently on the MVAC, the use of the MVAC system
Oh
on the
yeah,
evidence of the RAV4. And it's like, it really took off and it's fantastic.
it
So
is good. Yeah.
we're very diverse. And like I said, we've got Jack 61, Neverly, Rhonda,
Hmm.
Susan, Alice. We've got Sunshine Christina. We've got a
Hmm.
ton of really passionate people, and everyone is different. And we all
Hmm.
come together a couple of times a week, and we just have a blast. It's
It,
awesome.
it is. And all of that information is listed in the description below, where you can find Dr. Silkman in the Foul Play group, in all of his things. You could start over there with the YouTube channel, and on the back is all the connections to the Discord and everything else and what they're doing. But I can't tell you, I'm pleased. I'm a fan, like a hands down
Yeah,
fan,
thank you
fan,
so much,
fan.
Claire.
So I'll just push it a little bit. Yeah, y'all, if you don't blame me later that I was keeping secrets, because I'm not keeping this one a secret. This is like some of the best true crime stuff out there if you're really into it. I thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
Dr. Silkman. Please come back before the jury decides, and we'll talk
Well,
defense. That would be
I'm
great.
gonna, yeah, I'm going to keep up to date with what the
Hmm.
defense puts forward. I'm going to take copious notes, put it all together, and if you invite me back, if your subscribers want me back, I'm more than happy to
They
come.
want you. They were yelling in the chat. I didn't put them all up. There were quite a few. There's quite a few. And they're yelling in my DMs. If I could told you right now, I got 27 DMs. I think they do want
Oh,
you back.
fantastic.
They definitely want you back. I want you to consider this your invite. You like if you say yes, like we got a date. Like I'll just give you the
We got
time.
a date.
We have a date.
Okay,
Okay.
and I like this cross fertilization as well
Mm-hmm.
between our channels. I think that's so important. It really is,
It
because
is.
otherwise it's like an echo chamber. You know what I mean? But
It is.
getting different opinions, getting tough questions,
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I welcome it, and I
Oh,
try and use my knowledge and education to help others. And
that is
we do it
so
for
good to
free.
hear. we're all
We do it.
we're all true crime fans here, and we all do it as a hobby and a passion, and I'm glad, and I do it the same way. Like I'm not
Yes,
I welcome everyone. YouTube's a huge place, and I want to meet everybody that's doing it. You meet people every day that can only enhance your experience, and this has been
correct.
a true enhancement and a joy for me.
Oh, there's
I
a
am
lot of smart
so glad.
cookies out there. There's a lot of
Okay.
cookies out
All
there.
right.
I'll tell you.
Okay. So on that, final words. You got anything you want to tell them? Final words.
Well, my final words are: it truly, I'm honored to be on your show. I'm glad that people in chat really enjoyed it. There was a lot of people from Foul Play, new people I've never seen before, and it's an honor. Thank you very much, Claire, for inviting me.
Oh,
Like I said, normally what I would do is I would spend a week or 2 weeks going through everything all over again, but it's so stuck in my mind. It's a nightmare, and I'm really looking forward to what the defense now
mm-hmm,
puts forward. And I'd love to come back and we can have a
mm-hmm.
part two.
Yeah,
Be awesome.
join us anytime. And I'm doing the trial all week. If you want to pop in and talk about defense anytime, you've got an open invite. I pinned that StreamYards link. Don't hesitate. I'm telling you, when it comes to my channel, you're welcome anytime, sir. I'm
Thank you
so
very much.
glad. This was so rewarding for me. This is how I like to do it. Just open, informative, all the knowledge in just you make it so easy to understand. You
That's
really
important.
do. And
That
that's a gift. And you got it. And I'm really happy you could share it with the audience today.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Claire.
Well, so on that, I'm going to say goodnight, everybody, because we got to hit the bed if we're going to be there for trial at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning over there. But I'll see some of you. I still got to set up that stream, and we will have you back. And so don't come at me, people. He's coming back. You heard him. So, like, calm down. We'll get him back. He'll be here. Thank you so much, Dr. Silkman. Thank you
It's been
again.
a
And
pleasure, Claire.
okay.
Thank you
And
very
good
much.
night, everybody.
Good night.